tired of winning. And you'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore. Mr. President, it's too much. And I'll say, no, it isn't. We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more.
Good morning, everyone, and a very happy and blessed Memorial Day to you. What better way to spend the late morning of your Memorial Day than consuming a lab? And I have a lab here for you. I hope the stream stays up. We're getting a few little glitchy things that have happened during the pre-show, and I'm hoping that this does not portend poorly. But I think it seems to be okay at the moment. Play the Reagan clip for anyone who missed the pre-show for Memorial Day. Oh, that's a good idea. Hold on a sec. I gotta see if I can. Let's see. Give me a second. This will be worth it. Patriotic. Is that what it's under? Yes, here it is. Okay, hold on a sec. This will be more than... What the fuck was that? I just learned a new thing that my browser can do. How interesting. Okay. Bear with me a second here. I am going to pull this up. This is a speech that was part of the pre-show on EWBSX. It is originally from Nate Wiley Studios on YouTube. We Are Americans, a patriotic speech by Ronald Reagan, posted 5 years ago. For COVID, I would assume. It was probably, 5 years ago. It says November 16, 2020. So this was right after the election. What a good time to post a patriotic speech video. Okay, so for Memorial Day, this from the Gipper.
If we look to the answer as to why for so many years we achieved so much, prospered as no other people on earth, it was because here in this land we unleashed the energy and individual genius of man to a greater extent than has ever been done before. Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth. The price for this freedom at times has been high, but we have never been unwilling to pay that price. Those who say that we're in a time when there are no heroes, they just don't know where to look. The sloping hills of Arlington National Cemetery, with its row upon row of simple white markers bearing crosses or stars of David, they add up to only a tiny fraction of the price that has been paid for our freedom. Each one of those markers is a monument to the kind of hero I spoke of earlier. Their lives ended in places called Belleau Wood, the Argonne, Omaha Beach, Salerno, and halfway around the world on Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Pork Chop Hill, the Chosin Reservoir, and in 100 rice paddies and jungles of a place called Vietnam. Under one such marker lies a young man, Martin Treptow, who left his job in a small-town barber shop in 1917 to go to France with the famed Rainbow Division. There on the Western Front, he was killed trying to carry a message between battalions under heavy artillery fire. We're told that on his body was found a diary. On the flyleaf, under the heading, My Pledge, he had written these words: America must win this war. Therefore I will work, I will save, I will sacrifice, I will endure. I will fight cheerfully and do my utmost as if the issue of the whole struggle depended on me alone. We must realize that no arsenal or no weapon in the arsenals of the world is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. It is a weapon our adversaries in today's world do not have. It is a weapon that we as Americans do have. Let that be understood by those who practice terrorism and prey upon their neighbors. As for the enemies of freedom, those who are potential adversaries, they will be reminded that peace is the highest aspiration of the American people. We will negotiate for it, sacrifice for it. We will not surrender for it now or ever. We are Americans.
My wife says that Grandpa would have loved that speech. Grandpa was her dad. This is the man who called the receipt checker at Walmart a towel head. He was a door gunner in Vietnam. Great patriot. Patriot Grandpa. You know, I've sitting there when I was listening to it during the pre-show, then listening to it over again now. I was sitting there thinking how there was a time in my life where even the programming is still kind of active in the back of my head, listening to what he's saying and filtering it through the neocon lens, I suppose, and hearing all of the counters and the look how subversive it is, and look at all the libertarian stuff, really all the talking points that at least for me emerged through the libertarian world about the national security state and all this sort of stuff. And I've consumed this sort of thing from the perspective of let's say a naive believer as a child, as a young man, and then as a cynic. And I've come back around again to just I want to see a vision. I want to see a vision for my people, for my nation. I want to be proud of my nation. I don't want my nation to always have to perpetually be defined by her greatest sins, and then the debate to be over to what extent she's sinful. That's not the other people can have that conversation about my nation, but that's not the one that I want to have. I've spent that time. I've been there. I've done that. I've been the edgy boy, the one who just knows more than everyone and can actually anyone about anything, but it's not Reddit because it's based. And there's nothing based about Reddit. So if I'm based, then I can't be Reddit. No, bro, you're just Reddit. That's just Reddit. I don't need the perpetual relentless cynicism. I want to see a vision about my future. And I was thinking about this. I just wrote down, sell people what they want, not what they need. You don't need to tell, like, if something like that makes you uncomfortable, casting that vision of America, if that makes you uncomfortable, then you're just never going to, you're always going to be a marginal outsider. Because something like that just speaks to the heart of people. No matter if they've got a soul, even if it's been drowned in cynicism, they're still going to latch on to something about that, feeling inspired, the pairing the music with the visuals. It lifts up the spirit. We have all these great national symbols that we, and Like I hear, whenever I hear that sort of thing, I hear the shit libs, the sports ball shit libs that I've spent so much of my life around, being like, oh, well, you're doing the national anthem before the game, and what a waste of money the big flyover is, and oh, this is just our like war state. This is imperial propaganda. That's it's the same thing. It's the same spirit. Ugh, get this nasty shit libbery off of me.
Gross. Ew.
You don't need to sell people the, like, I'll just accept the premise. I'll accept the premise that we're helplessly weighed down by Zog, and every single decision made by every single person with any remote connection to politics is all motivated by the interests of Zog, and there's nothing we can do. Which is like, okay, so what's the call to action then? You told me a story, so what's the moral of the story? What do I do with this? But somehow we get this stapled onto, so actually we need to vote for Democrats, or we need to like strategically withhold our vote because it's gay to vote for Democrats and Democrats are bad, but I'm just going to vote like negative Republican, so positive Democrat. You know, it's like we get these sort of galaxy brain things. No, look what Spencer Pratt is doing. All you have to do is cast a vision of what, if I have power, this is what your life will look like. Not, here's all the things I will remove from you. No, this is what your life will look like. Let the silence speak. This is what your life will look like. We're going to fucking build a base on the moon. We're going to reindustrialize our country. We're going to make our streets safe. We're going to put a bunch of pressure underneath wages, drive wages up. You're going to have bigger paychecks. Just cast the vision forth of what that life is going to look like. Let people imagine themselves in that life. You don't need to give them a column rush.
You're either the Empire or under the influence of an empire. I'll take the Empire.
So true. So true. Give me the Empire. You don't need to give people a work order. Vote for me. Here's my work order of all of the things that are wrong. All the things that are broken. And here's my step-by-step policy checklist of how I'm going to solve these problems and get rid of all these bad things. No, show them what it looks like to have the bad things not there. Show them life without the bad things. Anyways, that was what was on my mind as I was watching that. Okay, we got a little game. We're going to do a little game here today. And we're calling it, best name I've come up with it so far is just a Grand Slam. It's not quite a Grand Slam, and so it kind of triggers my autism a little bit, but we're going to call it a Grand Slam. What we're going to do is, with the tip goal, there is 7 categories of transaction. There is gifted subs. There is each of the dollar amount, the special dollar amounts that have their own special alerts, which is $14.88, $29, $47, $88, anything over $100, or between $100 and $200, and then anything over $200. $200 and over. So it would be $100 to $199 has its own alert, and then $200 and over. If we can hit all 7 of them today, then we will hit the goal. And what I'll do is I'll do a drawing with 2. I'll give away 2 10%, 2 equal 10%. So I'll do the random drawing with all the names that are on there. We got 30 on there so far, I think. Let me double check. Yeah, 30 names. So the odds are not bad. And I'll give away 10% of, so normally if I hit the tip goal, I'll give away 10% of the total tip take for the day in the form of a digital gift card. I'll do 2 of those, 2 equal 10%. If we not only hit the goal, but we hit the goal by doing 1 of each. Once again, that's gifted subs. The gifted subs aren't going to count toward the goal, but just gifted subs, $14.88, $29, $47, $88, $100, $199, and over $200. one of each of those, and I'll do two. I'll give away two 10%s, returning the tips back to the people. Call it the Super Slam. Yeah, maybe it's a Super Slam. Yeah. Thank you to P. Bandersky, renewing his subscription. Pale Morning Dude, Kate J, renewing their subscriptions on Kick. Thank you to you guys. You're patriots. Now, let us get started. If you guys tuned in yesterday for the Pseudolab, it was a very, very good one. We were doing a Tchaikovsky celebration with brain donors and Sleeping Beauty. It was phenomenal. And in the middle of it, or before it, actually, the very beginning, I played this incredible schizo edit that was produced by Samyaza Speaks, the Indo-European Experience, he called it. You can go back and watch that yesterday. On the yesterday's episode. The Pseudolabes I don't post on YouTube for probably obvious reasons. We're streaming movies, so I can't post it on YouTube, but they're probably the best place to rewatch would be on Substack, or you can go to, I don't know if it plays the video through Spotify. Maybe I post it out as a podcast, but it's also on Rumble and on X if you want to watch the Pseudolabes on Replay Gang. Very much worthwhile. It was great. It was a fantastic combination. I never heard of brain donors, and it was tremendous. John Turturro doing slapstick was I did not know that he had it in him. But anyway, so at the very beginning of the episode, before we started the wave, I played this video, and I'm not going to play that original one again because a powerful mutual of mine here, West Bestern, did changed the song on it. So the original one was like it was sort of like a dubstep-esque version of E.T. by Katy Perry. Extraterrestrial, kind of for obvious reasons here. And Wes Bestern did this one. Now, originally when I saw it, I was like, I feel like the dude made his thing, let his thing stand. Don't just immediately reappropriate it some other way. But the original guy, Samyaza Speaks, he replied and he was like, oh, this is amazing. You pulled off something fantastic. The dude's really cool. And he's working on some more really good stuff. So follow at Samyaza Speaks. And as soon as something else comes out, I'm going to make sure that I highlight it here on the show. Neo-Darwinian Aristotelian bio-jihadist with Chinese characteristics. Extremely big 2-6 things right here. So Wes Bestern said, a truly magnificent creation by Samyaza Speaks on the Indo-European Experience. I wanted to see if I could find a classical piece of music that worked with the visuals. And after trying 30 different songs, one that some would consider cliche seemed to work quite well. So it's the same visuals as the one from yesterday, but a different track. Worked so well. tremendous. That's crazy how well that works. I gotta say, Indians getting run down by giant chariots is just fantastic. Fantastic work. All right, good friend of the show here, Jonathan Hemingway, shared this in a private chat and said a white guy who can dance is virtually unstoppable. I mean, President Trump goes ham with YMCA, and he's basically emperor of the Anglosphere. This thesis is coming together. This is exactly how Christopher Columbus got us the first time. Watch this boy break it down. The aunties love him. I'm pretty sure that's Patrick Casey. He's restoring order. Order has been restored by Patrick Casey. Oh, let's see here. Lurch said, magical internet money inbound. Let's get this WBS slam started. Oh, that's it. That's it right there. The White Boy Summer Slam. Let's check the magical internet money. We're gonna touch on the magical internet money here a little bit later. Where are we at here? Oh, baby! Oh, baby, Lurch! Lurch, my man. He gone and done it. He is making it easy on you guys. Today, Lurch the Great Patriot with $200 worth of magical internet money. Sir, I appreciate you. You are a remarkable man. Thank you, my friend. There we go. We're at 205. The Teal Bucks, yes. Now, I don't think I have a Teal Bucks alert, so unless someone else... I need to figure out a way to have these, like, on hand so that I can play them for these purposes. But unless someone else sends in a 200, then I'm going to have to stick with... Yeah, it doesn't look like... Nope, don't have one. So let's give you one of these.
Let's go. Come on. Get in. Let's go. Pwah.
Never listen to a panikin.
Amazing.
No more games. I want Trump to issue death warrants now against all these people. I want them killed. I want them dead now.
Thank you, Lurch. Great Patriot. Okay, so there was this launch that happened, the most recent Starship flight. And this is... I don't know very much about all of this, but I know that it gets me hyped. And I can tell that there's this is moving a lot faster than people appreciate. On one hand, it feels like it's moving slower because people just kind of get stuck in the eternal now. But this is moving quick and it's accelerating. And as Elon Musk and all of his projects begin to hit more and more of a terminal velocity as he's intersecting all of them together, the scale of the frontier that opens up to the human species across multiple different domains is difficult to fathom. But we're gonna have decades where centuries happen. Check this out. I got a couple of shots of this launch. I don't know how well it'll show up on the screen. I hope it does, but watch at the shockwaves coming off of this. I was like, oh, I wonder if I'll be able to see it. That's one of the most intense things I've ever seen. That's incredible. Here's another angle on it. magnitude of this as an engineering feat it's insane that people are just kind of like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. This is wild shit. This is peak civilizational behavior. Not only are they launching these things, this thing is a fucking skyscraper. Not only are they launching these things up, they're bringing them back down and landing them in the ocean. And what he's going for is not just reusability, not just like you launch the thing and it goes out and it does the thing and it comes back and it lands and you clean it up and you get it refurbished again and then you send it off again like within the next month. No, he's driving toward rapid reusability, meaning you shoot it off, it goes out, it comes back, it lands, it turns around and goes back the same day. This sounds absurd. But I mean, who's not betting on Elon at this point? I mean, especially if you understand what Elon is. Like, Elon is not just a singular person. He's a singular person backed by an extraordinary amount of capital and investment and interest the highest order. Now, Lurch says that has to be so loud. I don't know how well this is gonna come through. Because, I mean, it's captured by a video, then it's compressed, posted on the internet, and then I'm sharing it through to you guys, and you guys are hearing it. I don't know how well this will really come through. But from an unexpected source, Nicki Minaj says, when you were told to wear your earplugs, but you thought, how loud could it really be? Only to end up running back into the building because it was too loud. Look how far away from it she is. Listen to this. Wait for it. That's got the neurons fully activated. Like any man within remote proximity to that should be pulled at that thing like a fly at one of the bug zapper lights. Just that is so freaking cool. Ben Shapiro 2X says, I'm pretty sure this gets to the point where decibels stop being meaningful because the space between the sound waves is vacuum. So once again, that sound is what... Was it this one? No, it was this one. That is what this... Let's see. We are seeing what that sounds like. Imagine that going off like multiple times a day, all day, every day. And me after a night of Taco Bell, yeah. And think about the industrial hub that will form around the places where those things are constantly going up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down. We can't even begin to fathom what the future is going to look like. Now, on a perhaps a darker note, a peer-reviewed paper published last year in the journal Bioethics by two professors at Western Michigan University School of Medicine argues that it is morally obligatory to genetically engineer ticks to spread alpha-gal syndrome, a permanent condition that makes you violently allergic to red meat. The paper is called Beneficial Blood Sucking. Well, I'm prepared to write a peer-reviewed paper I'm going to write it and I'm going to publish it in my Discord, and all my peers are going to review it, that argues that it is morally obligatory to take the authors of this peer-reviewed paper and all of the people who peer-reviewed it and strap them on here. Right there. They're going to go right there. Their argument: if eating meat is morally wrong, then preventing the spread of a disease that forces people to stop eating meat is also morally wrong. Scientists should gene edit Lone Star ticks to enhance their ability to carry alpha-gal syndrome and expand their range into urban environments to infect more people. They call this a moral bioenhancer. They frame releasing genetically modified disease-carrying ticks as a vaccination that only infringes on your bodily autonomy rather than violating it. The distinction, apparently, is that a tick bit you instead of a government official holding you down. Alpha-gal syndrome is not mild. The CDC estimates up to 450,000 Americans are already affected. Cases have surged 100-fold in the last decade. Symptoms include anaphylaxis. There is no cure. Alpha-gal cases are exploding across the United States. The Lone Star tick's range is expanding far beyond its historical territory. And 2 academics at a medical school published a paper arguing this is a good thing that should be accelerated. At what point do we stop treating papers like this as fringe academic exercises and start asking whether anyone is already acting on them? You can see the graphic here, the range for the Lone Star tick. This was the before 1966 range, basically the deep south in Texas. And now it's extending all the way out into the plains and it has covered the Northeast and the majority of the Midwest. Now, I saw some people who were who wanted to defend this, and they're saying, "Well, no, this is like a thought exercise. They're not actually arguing for that to be the case. It's just a philosophical, just a game that they're playing. They're just merely saying if it was ethical to not eat meat, if meat eating was immoral, then this would be a natural follow-on from it. I don't care. I don't care. There are some things that don't need to be published. Because there are people who do actually think this way, who do want this to happen. The very best possible case you could make for this would be they're writing it as like a satire or a parody. And if that were the case, you would need to make sure you had the biggest fucking guerrilla social media campaign ever planned to immediately follow on the virality of this story with that. To say, no, actually, this is fucking absurd, and we were demonstrating the sorts of things that the science community would sign on to. That story has not penetrated my consciousness now, and this has been out for 2 weeks. This specific tweet has been out for 2 weeks. So, yeah, no. I said, this isn't science, it's criminal psychopathy, and these professors ought to be banished for life to a remote island monastery where they're fed nothing but red meat, compelled to hard labor, and forbidden from writing or publishing anything ever again on penalty of death. So this is the moderate position. That's the moderate position. The other option is this. No, it's just a thought experiment. That's nice. Now dig the ditch and eat the cow. Speaking of banishment, Marxist propagandist Hasan Piker is panicking after Scott Besson's Treasury Department subpoenaed him for aiding communist Cuba, possibly violating U.S. sanctions. The Gigagay is investigating Hasan Piker.
Influencer Hasan Piker might be in real trouble for visiting Cuba in March, where he filmed what looks like a propaganda video for the regime.
I'm here in Havana, Cuba, right now on a humanitarian aid mission. My goal here today is to bring awareness
Good
to
afternoon,
what
Patriots.
my government, the United States
This
of
is
America, has
Agent
done
Q.
to the Cuban population. One of the most ridiculous embargoes of all time that has only gotten more deadly as time has gone on.
Yeah, now federal officials have subpoenaed Piker as part of a wider investigation into violations of U.S. laws and sanctions, which prohibits supporting Cuba's communist regime. Piker responded today saying it's, quote, not great and BS and other things. This comes as the USS Nimitz aircraft carrier recently entered the Caribbean and the DOJ indicted Raul Castro. Joining us now is senior editor of Influence.
Look at that timing. The DOJ indicts Raul Castro, and then suddenly Scott Bessent is investigating. There's got to be a Scott Bessent climbing up in Hasan Piker's ass. Groiper. Here is the man, the creature himself. The memes have been great, like the one from Game of Thrones, but it's a dog, and the dog is like, "Tell Hasan it was me. I want him to know it was me."
Is not great. Okay, I mean it's bullshit, but
I'm sorry, I'm a nigger.
Still not great that they're after your boy. They're up my ass.
Shut up, Goyam.
And I'll obviously get into it right now. I'll tell you all about it, but let me blast off real quick. We will free you, brother. Yeah, free me. Free me.
He could only have gotten that idea from Benjamin Netanyahu.
Free me. I can't believe I'm saying that. But
sorry, not faggy enough.
I'm about to be seemingly made an example of. Is not
Get
great.
that ugly,
Okay?
disabled freak away from me. I don't want to look at his fucked up face. His smushed in, garbled, baby, disabled face. I don't want to look at it.
Interstate Juche said, I genuinely cannot form a theory of mind for panicans. There are things happening that would have been right-wing fever dreams just 5 years ago. Imagine 5 years ago that you would find out that Hasan Piker was under federal investigation for violating sanctions against Cuba. See, they never thought that there would ever be the possibility of consequences. They're like, oh, whatever. This is like a designated enemy of the state that's placed under sanction. I'm just going to violate those sanctions and just go over and advocate for them and take resources to them and smuggle weapons or whatever in for them. And who cares? No big deal. I'll get away with it. Uh-oh. I'm in trouble. Okay, just one quick thing here on Tulsi Gabbard. It was reported on the 22nd, was this 3 days ago, that she was going to be resigning from her position as the Director of National Intelligence. And the reason given for her resignation is that her husband has bone cancer. And it is true, her husband has bone cancer. And she's resigning to be with him. Now, OSINT defender here, who is sometimes has good stuff, but is one of these perpetual breaking slop offenders. This was the tweet that he sent. He said, Tulsi Gabbard has submitted her resignation as U.S. Director of National Intelligence, according to early reporting by Fox News. Now, seems like kind of an inoffensive tweet. But from the watcher on the web here, this is a very good example of a particular category of breaking slop tweet. He says, in regards to my post about understanding mimetic self-defense the other day, I would like to give you an object lesson. This is what we call a frame injection attack. Gabbard made it clear in her announcement, and it was clear in all official sources if checked, that her husband's health was the reason for her resignation. This wasn't information that came after the fact. But by trimming that bit of information, this account, or whoever this account is skimming, creates a frame. Why did she resign? If you understand who the target audience of the framing attack is, the retard right, you will understand exactly how they are hoping they try to answer it. That they get committed to their own answer first, and then will say that the bone cancer is a cover for the real reason. If you dwell further, you will likely see the intended outcome as well. Now, this is very obviously exactly what happened, and it was entirely predictable. It's become entirely predictable. And the people who self-identify by reacting this way, they self-identify as retard right, or perhaps generously retard right adjacent, they very predictably fall for this exact sort of breaking slop every single time. And you might ask, you might question, why is this particular category of breaking slop? Why does it exist? Why is there an intentional effort to get you to question why Tulsi Gabbard is resigning? Why would there be an intentional effort by these sorts of social engineering operations to make you suspect something nefarious or dark or suspicious behind her resignation? Now, to be clear, I'm not saying that there isn't anything behind it. I have zero insight into that. None of us has any insight into that. It's entirely speculative. So sure, you could speculate. But what happens is people go, oh, I'm just speculating, when actually they're inserting something permanently into their headcanon. So no, you're not just speculating. You're giving yourself a reason to believe that that's true, irrespective of the actual truth of it. If her husband has bone cancer, that's a really good reason to resign from a all-encompassing, super demanding, dangerous job. She's like placed under extra security. So yeah, that would be a very good reason to resign. Is it possible it was planned ahead? Maybe. I kind of doubt it, but you also can't rule that out. That she's resigning at this point. She's known for a while she was going to need to resign because of his health, and so she accomplished up to a certain point. They said, please stick around until you get this, and this done. And she's gotten those things done, so now she can pass things off to her deputy, and then Trump appoints a new one. Devin Nunes is kind of an interesting name here. He just recently resigned from his position as CEO of the Trump Media and Technology Group. You remember Devin Nunes was a guy who was intimately involved in the early happenings of Russiagate, has remained very close to Trump, is on Trump's National Security Council. I think they made him the chair of the National Security Council or something like that. But it was just within the last month or so that he resigned. So it's possible that he resigned knowing that she was preparing to resign because she told them ahead of time that she was going to need to resign because of her husband's health. And so they've lined this up. So both of these things can be true at once. That this was something that was planned and coordinated with the White House. The White House knew in advance. But they didn't force her out. It was just an agreement. Like, okay, you get to this point and then we'll move on. And also that there's nothing suspicious behind it. It's exactly what they're telling us it is. I don't know for sure if it's going to be Devin Nunes. It could just end up being the her deputy who's stepping into the acting position right now. And I'm not sure. Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at the nuances of how these things are done officially. But I'm pretty sure that Trump, if the Senate was to recess, Trump could appoint a DNI, I think. So that could be another interesting, like if he wants to recess appoint someone and the Senate is now going full obstruction, because it turns out all of a sudden there's the current Senate majority is 53-47. So just the right number of senators to totally, completely obstruct everything formally would be 4. And it just so happens that now we have 4 who are going into complete revolt, freaking out about the anti-weaponization fund, and they're just fully checked out and going to obstruct on every front. It's Bill Cassidy, John Cornyn, Tom Tillis, and the very important, the all-important 4th. Because if it was just 3 of them, then in theory, you could have a 50-50 with the vice president as a tiebreaker. But if there's 4, then if 4 have declared themselves in open opposition to Trump, then that effectively flips the majority. And that all-important 4th person is none other than staunch, principled patriot Rand Paul. So we'll be watching to see what happens there. In only 85 cases did companies pony up $100,000 to hire an H1B worker. 85 cases. Not 85 companies, 85 cases. That simply doesn't make sense if we were actually getting such incredible, not duplicate, workers from India or elsewhere. Companies should have had no issues paying about 20,000 times this $100,000 fee. That fee, spread out over 6 years, is $16,000 a year. And if these engineers were really adding anything, then that fee is nothing to what should have been their value. No, the reality is these workers were from mostly India and were simply here to replace existing workers. And great friend of the show, Catholic Orthodoxy, said for the doomfags that can't do the math, 85 out of approximately 85,000 applications per year is 0.1%. In simple terms, Trump reduced new H1Bs by 99.9%. And they're still fighting this out in the courts. 99.9%. This is from Bloomberg. Few U.S. businesses have paid the $100,000 fee to hire H1B workers. Only about 70 employers have paid a $100,000 Trump fee on H1B workers from outside the U.S. since it was imposed through a September White House proclamation, a government attorney said Thursday. The low number of payments undermines arguments that the fee is a revenue-raising measure that requires explicit congressional authorization like Trump administration tariffs struck down this month by the U.S. Supreme Court, according to Department of Justice attorney Tiberius Davis. What a name. Tiberius Davis. Attorneys for the government and plaintiffs, including a nurse recruiting firm, sparred in an Oakland courtroom over the lawfulness of the $100,000 charge that plaintiffs say has eliminated the specialty occupation visa program for small employers. That fee was the most restrictive step by the Trump administration so far, targeting skilled foreign workers amid a wider immigration crackdown. The hearing in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of California case is the second time a court has heard arguments over a challenge to the fee. A federal judge in D.C. previously denied an injunction in a separate suit brought by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. That case is now under appeal. In other words, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce sued the federal government over it, requesting an injunction blocking the enforcement of that fee, and the federal judge blocked or denied that request for an injunction. A third lawsuit was filed by California and other Democrat-led states in the District of Massachusetts. Attorneys in the Oakland case and in the Chamber's appeal at the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit have said the recent U.S. Supreme Court decision striking down President Trump's global tariffs regime bolsters challenges to the H-1B fee. Justices found the Constitution's framers gave Congress, not the executive, taxing powers. The small number of fee payers goes to show it's not a tax because it's not raising revenue, Davis said. Isn't that funny? So, if nobody is paying it, effectively nobody, rounds to zero, then it's not actually a tax. It's not being used to tax. You're not raising revenue. You just get some incidental fee intake occasionally. But the Supreme Court has abandoned distinctions between regulatory and revenue-raising taxes, says Esther Sung, of course, legal director at Justice Action Center and counsel for plaintiffs challenging the $100,000 fee. They can't even get someone named Jones. You can't get someone named Smith or, I don't know, like Robertson. The Supreme Court has reiterated that when Congress is going to delegate discretionary authority to the executive to impose monetary assessments of any kind, regardless of whether they're characterized as fees or taxes, it has to do so clearly, she said. That delegation has to be expressed. The justice's decision in Learning Resources Inc. v. Trump reinforces that point, she said. The Trump administration has cited authority under the Immigration and Nationality Act to restrict the entry of certain classes of foreign nationals. But Global Nurse Force has argued in its suit that Congress only allowed for immigration fees to cover the cost of administering programs. Their suit also argued that the fee is arbitrary and capricious and should have observed notice and comment procedures under the Administrative Procedure Act, burned the Administrative Procedure Act to the ground. Davis said Thursday that because the fee was issued through a presidential proclamation rather than an executive order, that it's not subject to APA review. It's almost as if there are people who are working on these things that know how to navigate their way through the bureaucracy. They're like shucking and jiving and ducking and dodging. They could have put it in an executive order, then it would have been subject to APA review. So they did it through a presidential proclamation. These are not the sort of things that you do if you're just trying to introduce some token thing to satisfy whatever. It would be very easy to just be like, oh, executive order. Oh no, it got knocked down. I guess we can't do anything about it. Judge Haywood S. Gilliam Jr. didn't rule on preliminary injunction or class certification motions from plaintiffs, although he denied a government motion to stay proceedings. While the separate fee challenge is under appeal at the D.C. Circuit, he also requested additional briefing from the parties on the impact of the Supreme Court's tariffs decision. Plaintiffs are also represented by Cohen, Milstein, Sellers, and Toll. Cuck Baxter Immigration. Literally called Cuck Baxter Immigration. Holy shit. Bless Litigation, Democracy Forward Foundation, and the South Asian American Justice Collaborative. We need to take the South Asian American Justice Collaborative. Just on its name alone, it needs to be attached to the outside of a Starship launch. But most important takeaway here is Trump has reduced 99.9% of new H1B approvals. And then this one was funny from the Telegraph. How Trump trampled on Modi's dream of an Indian superpower. The U.S. president's unpredictable wars risk limiting the veteran prime minister's growing ambitions. Trump was meant to help India rise by taking a tougher line on China. Instead, his wars and unpredictability are hurting Narendra Modi's ambitions of turning India into a global superpower. Sonny Mook said an Indian pooper power.
Dumps. They call them dumps. Big, massive dumps.
Good morning, bastards.
The conflict in Iran has hit India hard. The country relies on imported oil, much of it through the Strait of Hormuz, so rising energy prices are weakening growth, fueling inflation, and scaring off investors. Moody's has already cut India's growth forecast to 6%, well below the 8% Modi says is needed to make India a developed nation by 2047. At the same time, Trump has moved closer to China and Pakistan, two of India's main rivals, undermining years of effort by Modi to build stronger ties with Washington. Modi is now scrambling to limit the damage by seeking new energy deals abroad, cutting spending pressures at home, and even discouraging Indians from buying gold and traveling overseas.
Never listen to a panickin.
The crisis has exposed a deeper problem. Despite rapid growth, India still lacks the manufacturing power, infrastructure, and economic influence to rival China. Thank you again, President Trump. Thank you for saving us from the Jeet scourge. Check out this poll. This is New York Times and Siena. Next GOP presidential candidate should follow Trump's lead or take a new direction. 55% say the next GOP presidential candidate should follow Trump's lead. We call that a comfortable majority. 37% say he should go in a new direction. So there's 8% here who are ambivalent? So net plus 18 say the next GOP presidential candidate should follow Trump's lead. Now, when you break that down by age, the 18 to 44 is 27 points in the direction of go a new direction. And age 45 plus is plus 37 points in the go Trump's direction. And, a lot of people want to take this as like, oh, look at the young people. The young people understand better. Oh, stupid boomers. Stupid boomers. Never mind that 45 is like the cusp of millennials. This basically is just like millennial and Zoomer generation versus Gen X and boomers. So someone who's 45 is like maybe technically Gen X, but not really. They're like right on the very much on the millennial side of Gen X. So like the idea that this is like a boomer phenomenon is really funny. Here's an important one. Among non-whites, they say overwhelmingly that Trump should go a new direction. So basically, if you are young, no college, and more independent leaning, and non-white, then you don't like Trump's direction. I mean, this says it all right here. BA degree, it's plus 33. So like whites with degrees, essentially, are saying whites with degrees who are Republican say follow Trump's lead. The white college and no college are kind of close, actually, 39 and 22. And then those who identify as Republicans overwhelmingly say follow Trump's lead. The GOP-leaning independents are the ones who say go a new direction. Well, you know what? GOP-leaning independents, you're going to need to find yourself another party because this is Donald Trump's party. We follow Donald Trump. College-educated whites support Trump the most. We now have empirical proof that going against Trump is literally retarded and brown. So true, moderately radical, and he's getting absolutely dragged in the comments for misspelling empirical. And he's taking it in good humor. Skibbity Blazer here. Great analysis from Skibbity Blazer. I hope the Zoomers understand what a giant fucking reversal this is from a decade ago. Back then, all the college-educated, respectable Republicans were basically Mitt Romney or Bill Kristol. Trump's primary voters were the Chud veto, a rejection of the failed post-1929 GOP. We are now in control of the Republican Party, and the median midwit college-educated Republican has fallen in line. Now counter-signaling Trump lumps you in with the amalgamated brown foreign soup of the third world, breathlessly listening to Tucker Carlson talk about having his prostate enchiladed by demons, and Professor Jiang pretending anti-ship missiles are magical spells against CVNs, obese basement-dwelling incels donating to gay cowboy filleting Mexicans, and Democrats. This is not to say Trump is the end of the road. He's clearly not. The base has been shouting, send all the Indians back since term one. And though this recent USCIS rule change was a beautiful step in that direction, it was not enough. But we're all roughly on the same page. 2028 is a long way away. Lock in and win the midterms. Succession comes after victory. Succession comes after victory. Succession comes after victory. Tattoo that on the inside of your eyelids. Tips.kingpill.com, folks. Please do pay your white pill prescription fees. We're almost halfway to the goal for one drawing, and we still need a $14.88, a $29, a $47, an $88, and a over $100 tip to get the White Boy Summer Slam. We also need a gifted sub. That should be the easy one. Gifted sub should be real straightforward, real easy, low friction. Otherwise, tips.kingpill.com. Let me just double check and make sure that there wasn't something that got blocked. No. Okay. All right, so Andrew Colvet says, was on a background media group call regarding details of the Iran peace deal. All sorts of rumors coming out that they're very, very near a peace deal with Iran. Yet again. And I got to be honest,
Welcome
I've been
to
kind
the
of...
Gulag. If you survive, you earn your freedom.
Thank you, Emperor Atreides. Congratulations. Well below average. You can now use the emotes. I've been sort of like, all right, I kind of understand the whole state of where things are going with Iran. It's not super interesting to me. It's just wait until there's some kind of a resolution. And there's going to be all sorts of stops and starts, and I've expected that they're going to bomb them again, and they haven't. I've been kind of surprised by that. But I've been following this on a day-to-day basis is just a good way to drive yourself insane. So I just know something good will come when something good comes, because with Donald Trump, nothing bad can happen. It can only good happen. But it seems as if we're starting to get pretty close, and there's some interesting signals being made here. So, and excuse me. And also, Ted Cruz and Mike Pompeo and Mark Levin and all of those sorts are all starting to chimp out. So that tells me that something good's about to happen. So here's what Andrew Colvett says from TPUSA. A senior administration official confirms the deal is around 90 to 95% ironed out.
The perfect gift.
Money.
$29, Java. Thank you. There we go. Got another one checked off. So we've got the gifted sub checked off. We've got the $29, and we've got the $200 one already checked off. So we need 100. We need an 88. We need a 47. We need a 1488. Thank you, Java. I'm going to play that again. I like hearing my wife and my son. Oh, Nematoder! Another one bites the dust!
It can only good happen.
So true, Nematoder. Okay, I want to hear my wife and my son again.
The perfect gift.
Money.
A shekel for a good guy.
Thank you, boys. Appreciate you. All right, so what? We need an 88, a 47, and a $100 or more. So I'll give away. I'll do the normal 10% of the total take and a gift card if we hit the goal. If we get all of them, then I'll give away a second one. All right, so a senior administration official confirms the deal is around 90 to 95% ironed out. They made it explicitly clear that no American money would be transferred to Iran from the U.S. in any way, shape, or form. No pallets of cash. And here's the thing that all the neocons are all starting to spurg out about, and it's exactly what I told you they were going to say. Exactly what they were going to say. That when the deal comes to pass, they're going to say, this is just like the JCPOA. What does Iran get? Possible sanctions relief, but the framework of the deal, per this official, mandates that there will be no relief without Iranians making good on their end of the bargain first. No dust, no dollars. That's catchy. Meaning, if Iranians meet their obligations as outlined in the deal to give up their enriched uranium, then sanctions would be partially relieved. If the strait is opened without tolls or harassments of shipping vessels, the U.S. will end the blockade and there would be additional relief, etc. Quote, if they don't deliver on their commitments, then they don't get anything. We've set up enforcement mechanisms. The official also ripped the notion this is anything like the JCPOA, which gave Iranians pallets of actual cash, allowed them to stockpile enriched uranium in the first place, which is partly how we got here, and contained no actual practical enforcement mechanisms. You know, it's always funny to me that thinking about how they actually gave them pallets of cash, literally shoveled cash into the back of cargo planes, flew it over there, and dropped it off. Cash. Why would it have to be cash? Why would I could understand why Iran might want it to be cash, but why would the United States cooperate with that? What sort of sense does that make? What changed the Iranians' thinking, making them more amenable to a deal? It's unclear if military or economic pressure was most persuasive, but the official confirms Iranians are talking in depth and in detail about getting rid of their enriched stockpiles and stopping enrichment in ways they haven't been willing to discuss before. They've acknowledged that's something they now have to give on. The broader overarching goal is to empower the moderate elements of Iran to overpower the influence of the hardliners. Quote, we have high confidence that we have a good understanding of their command structure, end quote. Moderates may not be in control yet, hardliners are still there, but they are, quote, ascendant. The official says returning back to the blockade or a military posture remains on the table if talks break down. Now, clearly, this is U.S. administration propaganda. That's very obvious. This is them telling us what they want us to believe about it. So you could take that for what it's worth. Me, I'm inclined to trust the people who are sympathetic to me and my people. So we'll see what happens. But Trump just posted something very interesting on Truth Social, and the fact this is happening over a long weekend is there's a particular element of intrigue added to this. You know, the markets, U.S. markets are closed, international markets are open. Trump says negotiations with the Islamic Republic of Iran are proceeding nicely. It will only be a great deal for all or no deal at all. Wow, catchy. A great deal for all or no deal at all. Back to the battlefront and shooting, but bigger and stronger than ever before. And nobody wants that. During my discussions on Saturday with President Mohammed bin Salman Al Saud of Saudi Arabia, and then I'm not going to read all of these sand nigger names, but representative from the UAE, a prime minister and another minister, and from Qatar, field marshal, blah, 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 from Pakistan, Erdogan from Turkey, El-Sisi from Egypt, King Abdullah from Jordan, and King Hamad of Bahrain. So he's on the phone with someone said, like, this is me, like, talking to all my favorite groypers or something like that. It's pretty funny. He says, on the phone with him, I stated that after all the work done by the United States to try and pull this very complex puzzle together, it should be mandatory that all of these countries, at a minimum, simultaneously sign on to the Abraham Accords. Look at the way that he is establishing the frame here. The consensus mainstream perspective is that this is some big baffling thing that the United States has inflicted on everyone else. And Trump's like, you motherfuckers can't get along. So we have to come in here and sort everything out. And in payment for us coming and doing all of this for you, solving your problems for you, we are going to demand that you all sign on to the Abraham Accords. You're all going to write down here, I promise to play nice in the future. So those countries discussed are Saudi Arabia, the UAE, already a member, Qatar, Pakistan, Turkey, Egypt, Jordan, and Bahrain, also already a member. I gotta say, I am not a fan of this Turkey thing. It's just Turkey. It may be possible that one or two have a reason for not doing so, and that will be accepted, but most should be ready, willing, and able to make the settlement with Iran a far more historic event than it would otherwise be. This is kind of interesting. One or two possibly might have a reason for not doing so, and we'll accept that. The Abraham Accords have proven to be, for the countries involved, the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, Sudan, and Kazakhstan, a financial, economic, and social boom, even during this time of conflict and war, with the current members never even suggesting leaving or taking so much as even a pause. The reason for this is that the Abraham Accords have been great for them, and will be even better for everybody, and bring true power, strength, and peace to the Middle East for the first time in 5,000 years. 5,000 years! What did he mean by this? It will be 5,000 years. It will be a document respected like no other that has ever been signed anywhere in the world. Its level of importance and prestige will be unparalleled. I'm convinced, Mr. President. You've sold me. It should start with the immediate signing by Saudi Arabia and Qatar, and everybody else should follow suit. If they don't, they should not be a part of this deal, in that it shows bad intention. So, how's this for some mixed message sending here? So he says, it's possible that, where do you say up here? It may be possible that one or two have a reason for not doing so, and that will be accepted. But then down here, he said, it should start with Saudi Arabia and Qatar, meaning Saudi Arabia and Qatar have no way out. They are locked in. This must happen with them. Everybody else should follow suit. If they don't, they should not be a part of this deal, and that it shows bad intention. So he's saying there's one or two countries that may just be motivated by bad intention, and if they decide that they don't want to do that, then that's fine. They don't have to. We'll recognize, we see that you're operating in bad faith. We can't help that. Go on with your lives. We'll remember it in the future. That's your option if you opt out. You know that they're going to let you. You can walk away, but the deal's never going to get as good as it is right now. In speaking to numerous of the great leaders mentioned above, so not all of them, but numerous of the great leaders mentioned above, they would be honored, as soon as our document is signed, to have the Islamic Republic of Iran as part of the Abraham Accords. I'm not going to pretend that I'm the only one who's been seeing this or talking like this, but this is exactly where I've been expecting things to go. They are actively working. Trump's goal is to get Iran integrated into the broader Western world, to pull them in and draw them in and normalize them, re-normalize them. This isn't about destroying Iran. Trump has never wanted to destroy Iran. Trump has wanted to actually establish a good basis for diplomatic relations and cooperation and economic integration moving forward. Glassing Iran has never been on his list of priorities. What I'm kind of reading between the lines here. So he has this sort of mixed messaging sort of thing here where he's like, you know, if you're not going to join, then okay, that's fine. We will allow you to not join, but we're calling out now that you're operating in bad faith. Him specifically calling out Saudi Arabia and Qatar here. This indicates to me, I think, that Saudi Arabia and Qatar are already on board with this. And then him saying that there's numerous countries that he's talked to that would be fine with Iran being pulled into the Abraham Accords along with them. I think that there's one or two countries who are kind of on the fringe of all of this that they're trying to leverage in. There's probably a couple of countries here that, like, I would say maybe Turkey. They were blindsided by this. He talked about it with a bunch of the others, and then there's a couple of people who are kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and he's applying a bunch of diplomatic pressure on them to get them to commit. So he says, okay, so in speaking to numerous of the great leaders mentioned above, they would be honored, as soon as our document is signed, to have the Islamic Republic of Iran as part of the Abraham Accords. Wow, now that would be something special. This will be the most important deal that any of these great, but always in conflict countries will ever sign. Nothing in the past or the future will surpass it. I love how he both compliments them and insults them at the same time. Extremely Persian behavior from my president. He says, these are great countries, but they're always in conflict. And the best deal they will ever sign is the deal that they'll sign with me. Once I'm gone, it doesn't matter. Nothing else they sign will ever matter. It will all pale in comparison to the deal that they signed with me. They might be great, they're not me. Therefore, I am mandatorily requesting that all countries immediately sign the Abraham Accords, and that if Iran signs its agreement with me as President of the United States of America, it would be an honor to have them also be part of this unparalleled world coalition. The Middle East would be united, powerful, and economically strong, like perhaps no other area anywhere in the world. By copy of this truth, I am asking my representatives to begin and successfully complete the process of signing these countries into the already historic Abraham Accords. Thank you for your attention to this matter. This has been where I've expected the whole matter to go ultimately, is some sort of an integration and normalization of Iran with the surrounding region. Because this is part of, did I have something to this effect? Oh no, this is actually funny. This guy replied, he said, Grok, why is this not a great idea? And Grok says, it could actually be a strong idea. The Abraham Accords have already driven real economic booms, tech and security cooperation, and tourism for signatories like UAE, Bahrain, and Morocco without the usual preconditions. Linking broader normalization to an Iran settlement uses real leverage to counter Tehran's influence and build pragmatic alliances. The risk isn't the goal, it's execution. Sovereign states, especially Saudi, Qatar, Pakistan, and Turkey, have domestic politics and publics that aren't always aligned. Mandatory framing might create resentment or hollow commitments rather than buy-in. Bold diplomacy wins when incentives align, not just demands. So it's funny. When I saw the comment, I was like, oh, he's going to get something from Grok because he just told Grok to tell him something and Grok's just going to respond. But no, Grok actually was did not just immediately follow its programming. So let's see here. What does this say? The targets are Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, Pakistan, Egypt, and Jordan. The framing is blunt, sign, or it shows bad intention. He also floated bringing Iran itself into the accords once a deal is signed. This came after a call in May 23 with leaders from all 8 countries. According to Axios, the Saudi, Qatari, and Pakistani leaders were surprised by the demand. They'd called in to discuss Iran. They got an ultimatum on Israel. The Abraham Accords currently include the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, Sudan, and Kazakhstan. Adding Saudi Arabia alone would reshape the entire region. Adding all of them would be the most significant diplomatic realignment in the Middle East since the fall of the Ottoman Empire. Whether this is leverage, theater, or the actual endgame, the scale of the ask is unprecedented. No sitting president has ever publicly demanded normalization from this many countries simultaneously. This is from TFTC 1, or TFTC 21, sorry. This is the publication associated with the TFTC podcast and Marty Bent. Yes, no other nation or no other president has ever demanded normalization from this many countries at once. It's almost like Trump's goal is to completely rewire global trade, to completely reorganize the map. So this is a setup now for a very, very interesting subject from Matt Dines. Very, very good, very interesting thinker. He can be a bit rambly when he talks sometimes, but if you follow what he's saying, very few people have their finger on the pulse quite like Matt Dines at Levered USTs on X. He is a fellow Luangooner, and I've got a couple of clips from him here that are talking about PAX SILICA. And what can Bismarck teach us about today's geopolitical map? How's that for a tease? What can Bismarck teach us about today's geopolitical map? So we're going to talk about this PAX SILICA project because I think this has major implications on this Trump's new initiative to expand, or not new, but recently made public initiative to wildly expand the Abraham Accords. But before I play those videos from Matt Dines, look at this. Kirill, our great Q posting diplomat from Russia, special envoy of the president, and CEO of the Russian Sovereign Wealth Fund. He says, spoke in Beijing about the possibility of joint economic projects among Russia, the U.S., and China. Only partnerships, not restrictions, can lead to global development and prosperity. What does this sound like? Russia, United States, and China forming partnerships together.
На развитие взаимной торговли положительно влияет активность в сфере инвестиций. У РФП ожидается подписание соглашения завтра, в основной день визита. Пока же новости от главы фонда, что и США хотели бы поучаствовать в российской...
In the meantime, the CEO of the fund said that the United States would like to participate in the Russia-China investment projects on a tripartite basis.
Мы действительно видим значимый интерес от ряда американских...
We do see significant interest from a number of U.S. investors in joining Russia-China projects, including in the energy sector.
Инвесторов к заходу в российско-китайские проекты, в том числе в сфере энергетики. И, безусловно, вот визит, который был...
And you saw that President Trump brought a large business delegation during his visit to China.
Президента Трампа, вы видели, он привел с собой очень большую бизнес-делегацию. Это тоже
Which
говорит
highlights
о том,
American
что США
interest in
хотят
cooperation through economics and
на языке
investments.
экономики, на языке инвестиций, на языке бизнеса. Мы видим, что
China
Китай и
and
Россия,
Russia,
они
meanwhile,
поддерживают партнерский
continue to
подход.
follow a partnership-based approach, emphasizing the need for joint collaboration.
Подход к тому, что надо вместе взаимодействовать, санкции нелегитимны, и мы надеемся...
The sanctions are illegitimate, and we hope that Western countries, including the United States, will eventually embrace
что в
this
том числе
approach
западные
as well.
страны США к этому подходу в конце концов
A tripartite pact between Russia, the U.S., and China. Arc de Trump indeed. It has been called arc. Kirill is the guy who is constantly posting, where we go one, we go all, and nothing can stop what is coming. So Trump takes his big delegation over to China with all the entire industrial backbone of the United States, the CEOs representing that. They go over to China, they leave, and then a Russian delegation goes to China to go have a follow-up with them. And here we have basically, I think it was Luongo maybe, that referred to him as like the Steve Witkoff of Russia. Has kind of the role of Kirill Dmitriev, like one of the lead negotiators, diplomats. And I think I get the sense that he represents one sort of perspective within Russian politics. That not all of Russian politics is completely on board with this, but he represents one perspective of it, and he's very close to Putin. And he comes over to Mar-a-Lago pretty frequently. He's been at Mar-a-Lago, I think, a handful of times over the past year or so. And he's very, very accessible on X, posts there constantly. And it's interesting watching how delicately he navigates through, around the whole retard right phenomenon. He's very clued in. He clearly understands what the retard right thing is and goes out of his way to not add fuel to that fire, which is conspicuous to me. So, joint economic projects among Russia, the U.S., and China. With that background now, let us turn to Mindprint Hash, which is a little collaborative project between Matt Dines and I forget this guy's name, Cameron something or other. Apologies, Cameron, if you're watching. What can Bismarck teach us about today's geopolitical map? Matt Dines, levered USTs on X, uses gold and iron to frame how new orders are built. Military power, finance, industry, and coalition building. From Iran to Venezuela, the key idea is simple. Winning creates legitimacy. I've got a couple of videos here, and then if we do hit the goal before the end of these couple of videos here with Matt Dines, then I also have an interview. What the hell? Oh, there we go. I also have an interview with Joe Lonsdale and Jacob Hellberg, who you'll hear about here in just a moment, that is also talking about PAX SILICA. And I have an article, this article here, Thomas Massey's Dead-End Libertarianism. So as long as the tips keep coming in, then I will keep going.
So just to start, Gold and Iron is a book written in 1970 by a historian named Fritz Stern. So I tend to, prefer to dive deep into the historical archives, maybe things that, analysts and industry and capital markets maybe have forgotten or never read in the first place to understand history, the narratives, economic progress, changes in power structure, et cetera, that may have been gathering dust on the library bookshelves in the archives. I always enjoy this exercise. So how did I find this, Cameron, in the first place? So noticeably, right, we've talked about Social Security, the, entitlement, cost structure in the U.S. Treasury's kind of budget and how that plays into the federal debt and deficit situation. And one of the questions I asked, just diving deep on, my AI models was, all right, so I know the first state-sponsored old age pension was actually Otto von Bismarck's Germany, coming out of a unified German state led by, Prussia or Berlin at the center under the monarchy, right, who Bismarck reported into and served on behalf of. And I wondered, okay, when did that state pension actually collapse and become
Otto von Bismarck mentioned
uneconomic? And the answer, I got was kind of interesting. It was, it didn't formally collapse like you would think it would, say in the U.S. There's a long-term trend where a lot of corporate pensions have gone bankrupt and had to have been absorbed ultimately into a federal or state backstop, right? That's a topic for maybe another day, another episode. But it was actually the World War I loss and Weimar hyperinflation that just eroded Bismarck's pension system. So I got through how did this thing happen? Why was it implemented in the first place? And that led to this book, Golden Iron, right? And to me, the story of why is always what you want to get down to. Ask the Toyota 5 Whys methodology, Cameron. I know you like to process things in that framework. Just keep asking why, and you get down to how things happened, and then you can actually make sense of the world and understand it as it is, as opposed to the chaos and disorder that comes with the narratives if you're just trying to make sense of the world through news headlines alone. All right.
I just got to give a recognition of the moment that we live in, where we have a professional portfolio manager who is a Tom Luongo appreciator and spends his time studying the construction of the German Empire to derive insights into the modern geopolitical situation. It's a very good time to be alive.
Right. So the reason I like this book about Bismarck and how he was able to form and structure this unified German state is because it focuses on the process of building it out, but not just from like a military or political angle, specifically focuses on finance as like the key pillar of accomplishing or ultimately what amounts to winning at the geopolitical poker table against your opponents, right? So gold and iron is really a play on the two key resource inputs that were utilized by the key players, Bismarck, and then secondary, and this is a figure who's been forgotten by history, was his banker, this character Gerson Bleichroeder, who has been forgotten by history, essentially just erased, and that comes down to his largely due to his Jewish roots, also German citizen. He ascended to nobility. He got the titles. You got the von, by his name, all of that stuff that puts you in the elite class of society. But obviously, we know what happened with Germans and anti-Semitism in the course of the 20th century. We won't cover that ground here. But his reputation has basically been washed away because of how things kind of played out.
Gerson von Bleichroeder was a Jewish German banker and close confidant of Otto von Bismarck. He served as Bismarck's financial agent, especially when the Prussian king required financial independence from the United Prussian Diet during the critical period of German unification. He became the second non-converted Jew in Prussia to be granted a hereditary title of nobility. Gerson's family name probably originated from Bleicherode, I don't know how you'd pronounce it, a town in the Prussian Harz region in the historical province of Saxony. We know that Gerson's grandfather, Gerson Jakob, was born in the 1740s and as a young man went to Berlin, having received the right of residency there, since the Jewish community needed a grave digger. In Berlin, he married Susie Aaron, the daughter of a protected Jew, a Schutzjude, which provided additional employment opportunities and was a significant achievement for upwardly mobile Gerson Jakob. Gerson Jakob had 4 sons. His eldest son, Samuel Bleichroeder, opened a currency exchange office in 1803 in a remote corner of Berlin, which would later grow into the banking firm of S. Bleichroeder. In those early years, Berlin was an entrepot. I've never seen that word before. Hold on a second. Entrepot. A port, city, or other center to which goods are brought for import and export and for collection and distribution. Huh. Today I learned. So in those early years, Berlin was an entrepot between East and West, and there was a demand for exchange services of the many principalities of the Holy Roman Empire. Business improved when the French occupied Berlin in 1806. Samuel's shop also sold lottery tickets for such funds as army widows and disabled soldiers. By the late 1820s, Samuel had progressed to merchant banker status and had established initial contacts with the Rothschilds, the international banking house. Bleichroeder was born in Berlin. Gerson first joined the family business in 1839. In 1855, upon the death of his father, Gerson became the head of the banking firm. The bank maintained close contacts with the Rothschild family. The banking house of Bleichroeder acted as a branch office in Berlin of the Rothschilds Bank. In the 19th century, the Rothschild banking house represented the interests of the Austrian-controlled German Confederation in Europe. In the conflict that developed between the rapidly expanding Kingdom of Prussia and the pro-Austrian German Confederation, the Rothschild Bank found itself largely caught in an uncomfortable middle position. So that was the family background and early life of Gerson von Bleichroeder, the banker for Otto von Bismarck.
on that front. But slowly, like, we'll build this back up and recover how this actually got there. I bring this to today's situation. So we're in the middle of, like, we're unifying towards something as an old world transforms into a new. I think everybody's clear on that. We're talking about it every week on Mindprint Hash. There's clearly a previous industrial or an economic paradigm, governance paradigm, financial paradigm, you name it, like coming out of the post-World War II order. Since 2008, we've been in that transition into the new world, and basically Cameron and I are talking about it every week in terms of like real-time color commentary, as far as just playing it out on how this is emerging. Bismarck was doing, like, navigating the same situation in the second half of the 1800s in continental Europe, specifically this big power upheaval, economic upheaval, all of that as the two primary waves of industrialization. And then from a political standpoint, you could say the egalitarianism movement that broadened and was sweeping the continent. You could say like UK as well, US, same thing. Basically, like, the way I think about that, we were transitioning from a feudal era where there were the noble classes, the legacy, institutional wealthy, all of that, who were responsible for basically managing society, keeping everything on the rails. And then there's the middle, not really a large middle, but mainly a lower classes, where under the feudal era you had basically serfs. And in this transition that Bismarck navigated, those serfs, as you spread the egalitarianism movement, the lower and middle classes transition into like a citizen role or an industrial worker type of role, which was just like a huge social upheaval.
Right.
And we're going through something very similar today. When you're in the eye of the hurricane, though, you don't know how it plays out.
There's an interesting thing here, because he's talking about there's multiple different paradigms that are all shifting and changing together at the same time, where we're changing like the economic paradigm and then the political power paradigm. And people talked about this at length. There's all these different cycles and turnings and stuff that are all seeming to turn over within the same generation or two. As I'm just kind of musing on this, I'm thinking, so you get the Mongoloid.
We need to rescue our brothers trapped by the JQ as the end-all be-all. They would be powerful allies.
So true. So incredibly true. Many of them I've long seen as allies, and I don't know if there's like a wandering in the wilderness thing that's happening and they're going to come around eventually, or if there's been a fundamental split. But yes, I concur, Mongoloid. Thank you for that. And he's describing here how you have the industrialization that's happening. You're going through the Industrial Revolution, and part and parcel with that is also a political revolution, a revolution in terms of political identities and how people recognize their relationships to power. So you have what's essentially kind of like a mass elevation in status from a serf class to a citizen class, and then you at the same time then you have like the slave class also being elevated to citizen class, where citizenry, which was once a status that was reserved for a segment of the population, has now been granted to everyone, and eventually just everyone by default. It's just assumed now today. 200 years ago, it would have been absurd to assume that every single person would just have the rights of a citizen. Like, citizen was was a special elevated class. Now it's just, everyone is a citizen naturally. You're just a citizen of wherever you are. Citizenry has become a universalized concept. So if we're looking at these parallels where you have the elevation of one class to another, I think a lot of people have this sense that where there's going to be like a reverse to this, where there's going to be a bunch of people who are currently citizens who are going to not be seen as citizens. Like, the class of citizen is going to be deprecated or degraded. Like, citizenship is going to be revoked from people. And now citizenship is going to be revoked from some people, and it is in the course of things as a bureaucratic matter, administrative matter. Citizenship does get revoked from people, but in terms of like the mass, like an entire class of people having citizenship revoked, I think that's the wrong way to look at this. I think what's more likely is either, if we're kind of tracking the way, history doesn't repeat, but it often rhymes. If we track that, then I could think of two possible ideas. First is the creation of a new class, or the appropriation of a new class that is to citizens today as citizens were to serfs back then. So you have a new elevated class, and then a subset of citizens become this new class, and the remainder of them remain in the old class, sort of like serf hangers on, sort of. And we continue this cycle, and next time around it'll be 200 years or whatever, 300 years from now, whatever that new elevated class is, like all the citizen class just gets absorbed up into that, and we continue. Either that, or there's an interesting twist that could be introduced here with the combination of artificial intelligence and robotics. Because people are already talking about, there's already movements underway for like the rights of the robots, and people talk about taxing robots, as a way of if companies are going to replace their workforce with robots, then we're going to extract some carve out of revenue off of those robots to serve as sort of like an income tax kind of, to continue to fund social programs. These are different ways in which people are conceptualizing of robots, or software robots or hardware robots as persons in a certain sense, and like assigning legal status to them. And so I wonder if the way that this period rhymes is actually in the introduction of a new serf class, where all the people who are currently citizens, that category of citizen actually gets elevated because everybody is granted a class of what are effectively servants or slaves or serfs. But they're robots, hardware robots and software robots that are treated as legal entities in a certain capacity, but effectively what they're doing is they're like a class of labor that's coming in and providing the base level work and needs for the class above them, which is the class of citizens. These are just some musings as I was listening to this.
So reading this and how the power factions kind of line up against each other, and then you had like what would be considered an A+, go first ballot Hall of Fame talent at like this game, at playing the poker game at the upper, like the highest levels, to read about how Bismarck did this and incorporated finance. And he wasn't a financier, he wasn't a central banker, but this Bleichroeder character was his version of that. So it goes through this whole, I mean, it's 700 pages, it's a deep cut, but it tells you exactly how they transition, like they navigated like their hand. They played the hand for the Prussian monarchy and ultimately worked through the other side, victorious in establishing a new order. So we'll go deeper on that. Maybe we'll record a separate like book review episode, but I don't think anybody wants like today wants me to go 60 to 90 minutes on that. But I'll just stick to a couple of highlights that capture, like it fits really well to the era we're in today. So number one, Bismarck, coming from the conservative class, he came from the like nobility. He was part of the landed, like the feudal elite. And he was, the prime minister running the government on behalf of the monarchy, King William, right? And they were fighting for survival at this point. And their opposition was, this isn't new or original. We call them the same thing today, the liberal wing, which was really the emergent kind of class of society that were becoming the nouveau riche, industrialists, bankers, lawyers. I mean, maybe like medicine, like a new money.
A
that
commercial
was
class
paradigm, who were then competing with the old elite, but then also very oddly, they want to integrate them. They want to be at the same social strata of society. They want that acceptance, all the above, but they're competing against each other.
You can see how the merchant, the tie-in between what's the terms, like emancipation and the what's the word I'm looking for here? The like granting of the right to vote, the enfranchisement of like universal enfranchisement. You can see the connection between that and the merchant class, the commercial class, how their interests, they're aligned. And I've talked about this before, that when you live in a land in a world comprised of princes and kings and their territories, and then you have an industry that emerges of people who are shipping, maintaining naval relations, you're going to get people who are inclined toward, I don't know, let's say establishing themselves as a third party or a sort of a parasite stand-in, mediating relationships between others, they're going to have a strong incentive to undermine those established, landed power centers. Because if you think about it as a merchant, do you want to negotiate with kings or do you want to negotiate with commoners? So you want to the more you can enfranchise ordinary people, the larger your customer base is in terms of negotiating and bargaining and selling. Like you're getting that many more clients, where you're not doing like doing like a collective bargaining thing where the king is a stand-in who's bargaining on behalf of all of his people. You're actually able to go directly to the people themselves. These are trends and patterns that have been emerging for centuries.
And then you have everyone, right? The workers, et cetera, and they're being pulled in different directions here. And when your society is going through this process, like all things are possible, like deck cards thrown up in the air, and you basically have to have competent management. Otherwise, this can go very badly, right? We can go through other examples of societies that like just fall flat on their faces here. But the key thing you have to have is competence at the helm and like leaders with a vision to map into, to get society to, take one end of the trapeze and jump to the other, and like the Barnum and Bailey circus kind of analogy. Just they got to have something. They got to see that next trapeze bar and then be physically capable of grabbing onto it and taking society along with them for the ride. So this walkthrough of the experience of Bismarck showed a scenario of how that happened. Now, key thing, like when I was reading this, you can literally see it mapping very closely. Like I could go through the narrative and map onto it in our own post 2008. Storytelling of the players and developments involved. But I think the key one, Bismarck, going after the vision of how do we, get through this thing as a society without face planting and falling flat on our face. He utilized like financial tools, political maneuvers, all the above. But ultimately, once everybody's finances are pressed and stretched to the seams, it hit a point, like roughly, it was like by 1863, 1864, with this conflict in Schleswig and Holstein, just provinces that were at the northwest of present-day Germany. They went from like the Danish crown and were challenged and ultimately absorbed into this unified German empire that was coming into existence via war. It had it felt eerily similar to what we're going through in 2026 with Venezuela, Iran, and we could just go through the list of like Cuba's what's next, Greenland, like nobody knows. They're just waiting for our modern day Bismarck, which is the Trump 47th administration, and my telling of the story. It was that same process. And going into 1864, Bismarck had he was controversial. He didn't have majority approval ratings, any of that. He was an unpopular figure. The country wasn't behind him. They were anti-war, anti-Bismarck. And then once this starts happening in 1864, the military, the war won in Schleswig-Holstein. And in that process, he convinced the Austrian Empire to join with the Prussian Empire and just totally dismantle this tiny little two-province state in a matter of days. Same thing we saw, quick wins, Venezuela, or Iran's a longer situation, but from a military standpoint, it was, in my opinion, pretty clear pretty quickly how this was going. But he flips that win. Within 2 years, he's gotten Austria to declare war on Prussia. Prussia just cleans the clocks within a few days as well, and you suddenly got this German unified state that took centuries to put together. It just happens gradually, then suddenly. Yeah, and so the public support behind Bismarck and this vision he was building towards. And in the poker game, it was there were several moments where he could have been forced into a resignation. He could have lost several points along the way. But within a span of 2 to 3 years, 1864 to 1866, suddenly he exits with he amasses the giant chip stack at the poker table, and then it's just game on. The whole society is behind him, etc. And then it goes to its end game with the Franco-Prussian War in 1870, which did not go well for France. And at that point, it was game, set, and match. So, analogy today, you've got the same amount, I think, of public confusion. Well, start with, you've got the polarization, right? The same situation that the state was in. The Prussian state the German peoples were in prior to 1864. I think that's crystal clear here in the domestic situation in the U.S. But now that it's gone to the mats in the situation, like it's gone military, Venezuela, Iran, etc., and it has been for a while, but it's very clear right now. The U.S. government is executive branch and military, and they are facing an adversarial Congress out of. When I say that, I mean like both parties. If you add them up, now that doesn't mean the president and this administration don't have supporters in Congress and the Senate, but they do not have a majority that supports the executive branch and the military. Is how I would characterize the situation on the ground as it stands today. All right, so key thing here: winning begets winning. I think our colleague Dave, when I was running him through my read on this book, he was like, "That makes sense if you think about this in terms of a sports analogy." They said, like, wow, this team has such great chemistry.
Pale Morning Dew says, I'm joining late, so I don't know exactly what they're talking about, but could Bismarck's failure be chalked up to his class not having an easy way for the new merchant class to join? Thus, the lack of integration led to their eventual overthrow. He's actually talking about Bismarck's rise to power and the way that Bismarck was able to navigate and wrangle a bunch of sort of rival factions and capitalize upon political instability to actually rapidly rise to and assume power and then reign for a couple of decades. So then his eventual downfall would be a separate story, which I don't know as well. But so he's drawing this comparison between Bismarck then and Trump now, and like this is the big takeaway from this first video is the way to amass power is to amass power. Winning begets winning. So just start stringing wins together. If you want big wins, you got to get small wins. That's why the small wins matter. The small wins matter because you don't get the big wins without the small wins. Winning is actually a process of stacking wins. It's not losing and losing and losing until suddenly you win. This is like the Saturday morning cartoon Deus Ex Machina. Like people's brains have been rotted by Hollywood. You win by winning.
I was running him through my read on this book. He was like, that makes sense if you think about this in terms of a sports analogy. They said, like, wow, this team has such great chemistry. The stadium's full. They're winning. Like, everything's great. Is it just the players? Do they love getting along with each other? It's like, no, the secret ingredient is winning. Like, the stadiums are full. The fans are cheering. They're singing together because they've won 20 games in a row or they won the Super Bowl, right? Like, this is just obvious. So
this is something that's really, really obvious to anybody who follows sports. Once again, big check mark in the column, in the pro sports ball column. Anti-sports ballers are rejected. Thank you, Pale Morning Dude. Winning begets winning. How did that team get so good? Because they got so good. They win. How do they win the games? They win the games by winning their individual matchups. They win in the individual moments. And you start stringing those individual moments of wins together, which begins to generate more and more wins. You don't win by losing. You only win by winning.
I think where we look at this thing today, the Iran situation, it is in like who knows what inning we're in, but we're past the 5th or 6th at this stage, I would think. It's starting to come together. We're looking for the closeout, right? It's not over yet, but we've got either the setup guy or the closer, on the mound at this point, trying to wrap this up. But my point here, everybody's worried about midterms, country's anti-war, everybody's confused about what's going on. Take a page from like this thing can change very quickly, and I think this whole order, what we're marching to, like you have to have visionary leadership who is playing this geopolitical poker game towards some end.
Okay, so that was the first video. And then this is a follow-up. Within that context, then, we have the PAX SILICA framework. And reminder, I have, if we hit the goal, as long as the tips are still coming in, then after this, I have this interview, Trump's plan for AI dominance with Joe Lonsdale, talking to Jacob Hellberg, who you're about to hear about in this other video. And then I can also, if the tips keep coming in, then I can also do this article for Thomas Massey's Dead End Libertarianism. So let's listen to this. This is PAX SILICA naming the new U.S.-led order for AI, trade, Bitcoin, and defense. Levered UST walks through the timeline, the Philippines and Indonesia entries, why PAX SILICA is a reordering of trade, rather than deglobalization. This is an important observation here, that this PAX SILICA framework is actually not a deglobalization necessarily, but it's a restructuring of the global order. So this idea that like the empire is dying, the empire is collapsing, it's going to go away, we're going to break up into regional blocks. No, we're getting a reordering, a restructuring of trade under new management, let's say.
I think it's very clear at this.
Oh yeah, the White Boy Summer Slam update. We've already gotten a 200. We've gotten a 1488. We've gotten a 29. We've gotten a gifted sub. So what's remaining? We need a 47. We need an 88, and we need a $100 tip. So 47, 88, $100 tip. If we get those, we'll pass the goal. I'll do the rest of the stuff I have lined up here for today, and I will give away 2 separate gift cards of 10% based on random drawings done from forum.kingpill.com. Go make sure you're signed up for that. You could do a 1776. I'd be very happy if you did a 1776. That'll ensure that those 10% giveaways are very, very large, but there isn't a special alert for it.
I think it's very clear at this point. Like, Cameron, when you put together the themes this week, PAX SILICA, we'll get into that in a second. It is crystal clear now we have an end game that this administration is building towards. It encompasses like all of the key trends right now: AI, logistics, supply chains, critical minerals, international trade, finance, Bitcoin, like you name it. It's like, boom, we got a label for it here. Yep. It's PAX SILICA. Yep. So Cameron, I think if you want to start a seed question here, but this was actually launched in December 2025. And if I had to compare, we've put up a lot of maps. Like at this point, there's so many new organizations we've thrown at the audience over the last few weeks. Board of Peace, the Artemis Coalition. Like there's so many new bodies.
Abraham Accords,
for international agreements. You're like, why is this the key one? So if you're looking,
Archimedes Moon says your problems aren't your problem. Momentum is your problem. A train at a standstill can't get going if a small stone is put in front of a wheel. At full speed, it can barrel through a wall. Yes, I remember when I was like going to youth groups and stuff when I was younger, and people talk about how you can ask God for direction, but he can't move you one way or the other until you take a step forward. You have to start. You have to take the first steps, and then you can be moved. You can be redirected. And this is funny because, like in the sports ball world, there's constantly a debate between the nerds. 47, P. Mandersky.
Don't tell my wife.
Your secret is safe with us, sir. Thank you for that. Deeply appreciate you. We're only $100 away. $100 away from the goal. One alpha male alert. And we'll be there. I must have... Oh, no. We need an 88 as well. That was the other one. We need an 88. There it is! Duffhead! What timing?
All hail Otto von Bismarcko.
So true, Duffhead. All hail our great regent of Cuba. Thank you, sir. All right, so $13.12 gets one giveaway, and then the alpha male alert will unlock the second giveaway. Thank you guys. You're great. Pale Morning Dude says, kick out the immigrants, eat the libs, bask in the EWBS sun. Eternal White Boy Summer Sun. Tremendous. I don't even remember what I was saying. Oh yeah, momentum. There's a big constant argument going on between the nerds, the spreadsheet socialists, and the momentum bros. The guys who talk about momentum as a real thing, and the nerds get so mad. The nerds hate it because they can't you can't put momentum on a spreadsheet, and so they want to say it's not real. It is 100% real. 100%. That doesn't mean that momentum can't change. Yeah, momentum can flip it. Suddenly. It takes one thing, one one bit of luck or one extraordinary accomplishment by some guy who will not be denied, and the momentum can flip. But then, once the momentum gets going, it gets harder and harder to flip. My wife says there's quiche Lorraine, homemade coleslaw, and bacon waiting for you. Oh, baby. Oh, baby. All right, let's keep this going. The signatories to the PAX SILICA framework so far: Australia, Finland, Greece, India, Israel, Japan, Qatar, Republic of Korea, Singapore, Sweden, the Philippines, UAE, and United Kingdom.
On it, all the economics that this administration would.
Oh, let me read this real quick here from Jacob Hellberg. If the 20th century ran on oil and steel, the 21st century runs on compute and the minerals that feed it. This historic declaration hails a new economic security consensus, ensuring aligned partners build the AI ecosystem of tomorrow, from energy and critical minerals to high-end manufacturing and models. PAX SILICA is the Department of State's flagship effort on AI and supply chain security, advancing new economic security consensus among allies and trusted partners. And this is from Jacob Hellberg, the Undersecretary for Economic Affairs. You guys will, whether later today or on a future episode, you guys will hear from Jacob Hellberg. He's a very interesting character. We'll say that.
The economics that this administration would view as forming the new backbone of what's going to be built out from an economic standpoint in the 21st century. This encompasses all of that. And if you look at the countries that have signed on, I think something very clear stands out. The countries that are missing are continental European powers. The countries who are in, you've got like basically the UK or Commonwealth. So this is absorbed into the the old British Empire franchise, the Anglo-American partnership that took over for that in the post 1913 order. That's absorbed into this. But you've got the minerals producers or the critical resources producers, Australia. I mean, the U.S. is in there. But then you've also got energy like Qatar, UAE, etc. You've got the semiconductor production. You got Korea, Japan. And then you've got the key bottlenecks here as far as the trade routes are concerned, where we can float ships on water and move all the the stuff in the supply chains to build out this new AI world or wherever we're heading. Those countries are all in there too. So this is the vision, I think, and it's laid out by Undersecretary Jacob Hellberg. We'll have his photo on the back end.
I just remembered, I've been sitting on these videos here. This is April 29th. The last one is April 28th. I bookmarked these at the time, and I've been sitting on them because I wanted to do the stuff on AI that we talked about last week. I wanted to get those do a little series on that stuff to try to help frame up what the significance of this is. Like, once you understand the magnitude of the AI revolution, then I think this makes even more sense.
But he's kind of the point man for putting this all together. So this is what I would call the Bismarckian vision. Maybe we'll call Hellsberg, we'll nickname him Silica Bismarck. Might stick. So we'll see how it goes. I like that. We still need a Bleichroeder, and my AI model proposed Michael Saylor for that. I'm not going to go there yet. We'll see how that one plays out.
We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. I'll challenge him there. But some of these figures haven't emerged quite yet for how this next 10, 20 years is going to play out and evolve. All right. Now, what was the development this week? So I mentioned PAX SILICA was announced. We had the first 8 countries sign on to this in December 2025. So this is 4 months in the making. But last week, this was April 16th, we saw the Philippines sign on. And what they committed in PAX SILICA was to set up a 4,000-acre special economic zone on the island of Luzon. And they're basically going to be, it's a huge chunk of land. And it's basically going to be a special economic zone that handles, you can think about it as logistics here. Think about Luzon as a territory. I have it pointed out on a map here. But going back to like Spanish Empire times, this thing was a key, let's just say, logistics hub for international trade. You've also got low-cost labor there, et cetera. You've also got some mineral resources there. So this is a nice key node to add into the PAX SILICA framework.
We're recolonizing the Philippines, boys.
In my opinion. Now, if you go back one slide, Cameron, I've got the slides really quick. Just want to talk about these. Luzon. When you think of Luzon, I think about General MacArthur's famous line. He got basically booted. He lost at Luzon to the Imperial Japanese, and I want to say 1942, and just famously just tuck tail retreated out of there. But on his way out, he said, "I shall return." And there was this famous photo of him. Was it 1945? He's like, "Yep, he made good on that one." This is him, Douglas MacArthur. Yeah, exactly. With the famous recovery there. So what that represented, like Luzon, it's since Spanish Empire days, it's been a key piece of real estate to hold for who ultimately controls the global trade franchise. So to put that piece into this PAX SILICA puzzle is a massive win or a massive addition to a coalition that's shaping up. That is the ultimate vision that I think we're building towards. This is a bigger picture trend, in my opinion, than just one midterm election, something like that, one presidential election. You've got the U.S. military behind it. You've got U.S. capital behind it. You've got those two things picking up partners across the globe into their fold. It's like this thing's a snowball rolling down a mountain that is, at this point, looks like to me, nothing's written in stone yet, but this is a force gathering momentum towards inevitability or unstoppability. Maybe caveat that, maybe something else emerges, some other competing faction. But this is, if we can just follow this framework, I think it's very clearly coming into being as at this point, I could say years and decades, but it's coming together at this point at like a daily, weekly type of basis as the gradually, then suddenly kind of framework or escalation in events really starts to take hold, especially in 2026. All right, so the next big development here, Cameron, this, like, to go back, we'll talk about the map here in a second, but April 13th, this would have been a couple of days before the Philippines PAX SILICA announcement. April 13th, the U.S. and Indonesia made a statement of major defense cooperation partnership. So basically, they're going to sign up for military modernization and capacity building, training, conduct joint exercises, operational cooperation, logistics, etc. So if you think about the importance of this is also huge. If you think about Indonesia, it's these massive islands. It's like hundreds of islands in the South Pacific. But most importantly, they've got the one that borders the southwestern side of the Strait of Malacca, key choke point specifically for the trade routes between the Arabian Peninsula, both coming out of the Suez Canal and then also out of the Persian Gulf. They meet up, they fork. You really got to have this. If you can't defend the Strait of Malacca, there's other routes through, like you see them labeled here on somebody's Reddit post. 1, 2, 3. There's other routes up into Southeast Asia.
So basically, if you're going from Southeast Asia and you're trying to connect through to anything this side of the Strait of Malacca, anything to the west of the Strait of Malacca, so India, Pakistan, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Africa, any of these points over here, whole Persian Gulf, the path of least resistance, or the straightest path, the cheapest path in terms of fuel expended and time, is to come through the Strait of Malacca, right here between Indonesia and Malaysia. Really, really key choke point. Probably even more important in terms of volume of total global trade than the Strait of Hormuz. Strait of Hormuz is right up here. And then Bandar el... I can't even remember exactly what it's called. Bandar... No. Every single time the word is there in my head, and then when I try to say it, it just doesn't. It's like something El Bab. Bond El Bob or so. Bond El Bob. It's something along those lines. It's not Bandar Abbas. No, that's up inside the up closer to Iran, part of Iran. Man, mouth doesn't want to say it. Anyways, so there are these other routes that you could go. Like if the United States establishes a security position on this chokehold here, the Strait of Malacca, then there are other ways that you could go, other pathways. But you see how much further out of your way you would have to go to sail to bypass the Strait of Malacca. So this was an important one, and they also signed an agreement with Morocco on the Strait of Gibraltar over here as well. So locking down all these different trade corridors is a key component of this, and you can see all of this is being integrated into one new economic order, tying in energy, compute, minerals, and ultimately, I think stablecoins are going to be a big part of this as well. I don't know if we'll talk about stablecoins much today, but I can't remember if he mentions it in this video. But at least in the future, I've got some stuff on stablecoins I want to riff about.
China, Japan, Korea, but all of them go through Indonesia, like Indonesian waters. So this joint defense, like Indonesia is now into this U.S. vision, right? You wouldn't see this like you wouldn't see this announcement. This
remind me what the primary religious representation in Indonesia is signing this big trade agreement. You know, I've been told that the Trump administration is motivated by this like illegitimate hostility toward Muslims. So I'm curious how that fits into this framework of them signing these key agreements with Morocco and Indonesia, the Gulf states, trying to fit these frameworks together.
MDCP otherwise, right? So they're not in PAX SILICA yet, but from a defense standpoint, they're in the sphere. And I think like this kind of taps into, you know, we've been guilty of this in the past, but hopefully we haven't been overdoing it. But the deglobalization narrative, I don't know at this point that we can say it's a total deglobalization as opposed to a shakeup, right? Sure. The old way, the old order, that thing's being, you know, smashed, foreclosed upon, etc. And, you know, in the bankruptcy proceedings, the M&A, the hostile takeover, some new framework is taking over. So at this point, to me, I'd say, like, you know, maybe this isn't the collapse of the remnants of the British Empire. Maybe this isn't the collapse of globalization. It's a new era of globalization. There's a new thing that's going to be, you know, unfolding or built out. But I think the key thing, as I kind of put this to, you know, what we've been talking about, like Davos 2026, who was upset? It was the continental Europeans. I think the order here, there's going to be some factions of the old British Empire, continental Europe, who are not going to be a part of the ownership class or the equity share class of this new PAX SILICA.
So it isn't the elimination of globalization. Now, here you can do a little word concept thing. By globalization, are you referring strictly to the act of like a globalized order, an order that is global in framework, or are you talking about globalization proper? So globalization proper, when you're using globalization to refer to a particular collection of ideas that are ordered around the priorities and incentives of a particular selection of the population, yes, the globalists, that order is being like he said, bankrupted, foreclosed, dissolved, restructured into a new order with a new collection of shareholders directed at the interests and incentives of a new set of shareholders. So it's a globalized trade network that is built for the interests and purposes of serving a new set of masters. When you're talking individual people, there's going to be individual people who were part of the shareholder class of the old order, and they're part of the shareholder class of the new order. But that doesn't change the fact that it is a restructure
that's being put together. So the one continental European power that is in PAX SILICA, we don't need to talk about this deeply at this point, but Netherlands are in there. And if you think about ASML with the lithography machines that are critical for semiconductor manufacturing, they're in the fold as well. So Netherlands in, but your other Northern European powers, you know, maybe UK's in, but a lot of the basis for E3, old capital tied up there. Its longevity is you know, tied into maintaining the status quo that's now clearly gone. Right. You can kind of see this shaking up in real time, and it's it's emerging quicker at this point. Like the birth of this thing is like, if it's not here yet, it's the baby's due anytime now.
Yes, thank you, Ben Shabir on 2X. Bob Elmondeb. That was the phrase I was thinking of. The name for this strait right down here next to Yemen, between Yemen and Eritrea and Djibouti and Somalia. Bob Elmondeb.
All right. So that's PAX Silica. Cameron, you have any other comments on that? I know Korea, you're talking like the Strait of Malacca. It's a big topic in the headlines locally.
That's right.
Where you are this week.
Yep.
Anything on that before we leave?
No, I think you really touched on it. The piece that I wanted to get across to the viewers is really just these trade routes, right? And so there's been a lot of conversation that I've been hearing or seeing online, things like that. And I'm, to Matt's point, I'm here in Korea right now visiting some family. When it comes down to it, if there isn't actual control over these trade routes, none of this works out, right? So as we were going to the grocery store, just to share an anecdote here, the Strait of Hormuz still mostly blockaded. Maybe it's open, maybe it's not. Schrodinger's Hormuz. But the grocery stores are rationing the actual grocery bags, right? So you can't, you can go buy one grocery bag at a time per transaction, but you can't go in and say, I want 2 today or something like that. So again, just the downstream impacts of some of these things, even if you're able to say, okay, we want to have this broad-based partnership, I think having the Indonesian signatory is critical here. Otherwise, there's no way to actually get any of that oil, any of the minerals, et cetera, over into Southeast Asia without having somebody else, maybe let's say China or somebody, having a say in what goes through.
Yeah. No, that's great color commentary on the ground. So yeah, the way I view this, all right. So the Iran situation, clearly not over yet, but it's in the military's hands right now, as well as, there's negotiations back and forth between, Witkoff, Kushner, JD Vance may be on the Islamabad U.S. consortium, TBD. But the way I think about that, like we've got the NBA playoffs going on right now, so I'll make this analogy. So coach and players are focused on winning the individual game, which, let's say this Iran situation is that. It's in from the general managers or say the ownership of the team, they're comfortable leaving the coaches and players to close out the game, right? They're up by 20, fourth quarter, play it out, get the win. We know how this one's going to go. And then the general manager, team ownership, front office, et cetera, they're working on let's say the draft or, other bigger picture strategic things being put together. That's how I would frame this broader situation of where we are right now. And then you also have the domestic populist situation. Everybody's confused right now. We don't know how to make sense of A or B. The disinformation and the noise, like I could just name me a talking head podcaster influencer on the geopolitical front. Like better chance than 50-50 that they're dead wrong on this or don't know. They're just injecting noise in the process.
And there's this show, King Pill, they call it King Pill. Absolutely incredible. One of the best shows run by a total patriot. They call him Matthew Erickstein, king of the MAGA chuds.
Wow, so true, Mr. President. Thank you for the vote of confidence.
Part of it, or a lot of it, is potentially by design, who they actually respond to, work for, et cetera. But that's just the framing, like to set this where we are right now. And, a lot is going to change in the next 3 to 6 months. So if everybody's, holding their hair, pulling it out, pants on fire, all that stuff, worried about the midterms, I would just say like there's a lot that's going to take place between now and then. So I guess we'll leave that one there.
And remember, this was a month ago. This video here was from a month ago. So think of how much has changed just in the last month with respect to that. So I don't know yet exactly how the Abraham Accords and PAX Silica, I don't know in really detailed, tangible terms. I haven't seen reports or people talking about how PAX Silica and the Abraham Accords directly integrate, but you can see the framework for it here as you're establishing, as you're connecting. There's a number of the countries that are part of, like UAE and Qatar, countries that are part of the Abraham Accords who are also implicated in this PAX Silica network and arrangement, which is really securing supply chains and ensuring like all of these countries that are signatories onto this are going to be expected to operate within the AI stack, to use the AI stack, the official U.S. government AI stack, which is effectively, it's going to be, when you pair together the U.S. defense umbrella with the U.S. AI stack, hardware and software stack, and the U.S. financial umbrella, when you put all these things together, you see this is the new golden iron. This is what's going to form the umbrella of what is the American empire, which is going to be a global empire that is governed by America. truly by America, versus in the past where America was like the velvet, or was like the fist inside the velvet glove. That's not, even that analogy doesn't quite work, because I guess maybe the fist isn't smart. The glove is running. It's a smart glove. I don't know. The analogy is breaking down. America was once the defender and protector of someone else's global order, and America is now asserting itself as the defender and protector of its own global order, using the technologies of the future. Because then, like, think about the advance that America has with respect to the rest of the world on entry into space and the opportunities. Whatever space is, I don't even want to get into that debate right now, but whatever economic and civilizational level opportunities that presents, that's going to be filtered out, funneled through and filtered out to the nations that choose to sign on to the package here, where you get the American defense umbrella in return for operating within the American financial umbrella on American payment rails. Very, very interesting connections here. All right. Well, because we've not hit the goal yet, I'm going to wrap with a little thought-provoking, inspiring message for you guys. What's the harshest truth every young man must eventually learn? Everyone is always rooting for you. Your parents want you to be a great son. Wife wants you to be a great husband. Your boss wants you to be a slam dunk hire. Every first date you've ever been on, they've been rooting for you to get laid. Every time you start to tell a joke, people hoped it would have a hilarious punchline. Your proximity to anyone is a reflection of themselves, meaning the deck is never stacked against you, and your failures are completely your own. You may not want to hear that. You may not believe that. But if you choose to operate as if that is the case, then you will unlock a great future for yourself. You'll begin to win, and winning will beget winning. So with that said, go join the King Pill Discord, kingpill.com. Follow the show, share the show, leave a 5-star rating and review if you are one of the Replay Gang podcast listeners. Help us spread the message that way. Be on the lookout for an interview show coming soon. I've got some very interesting candidates lined up for interviews. It'll be a new component added to the rest of the show. Enjoy your guys' Memorial Day weekend. Go listen to a little bit of EWBSX while you're at it. And I will be back for another episode. Wait. What are we waiting on? $14 to hit the 400 goal, and I'll do a giveaway. I need an alpha male alert. We need one alpha male alert, and then I will take a then I got to take a quick bathroom break, and I can come back and I can play this video on Trump's plan for AI dominance, an interview with Jacob Hellberg, the guy leading the PAX SILICA effort. And I've also got an interview here, or not an interview, but an article about Thomas Massey's dead-end libertarianism from Daniel McCarthy. I'll save these for a future episode, but it'll take one alpha male alert to unlock them. So I'll vamp here for just a moment longer to see if something is coming through on that front. A take so Gentile it crashed my internet.
Gentile.
Shut up, Goyim.
I've got bad news for you. You're Jewish.
Okay, Jew. Okay, you fucking Jew. Fucking Jew from Israel. Silence.
Trump's a Jew!
You want to kill the Jews?
He could only have gotten that idea from Benjamin Netanyahu.
Faggot? Yeah. I just did. But would you faggot. Okay.
Let's go. Come on. Get in. Let's go. Pwah.
Amazing. I'm a human nigger going hard as fuck.
There you go.
All right, let's see here. Will you interview Doyle? That's a very good question. Imagine what that would be like. The internet would cave in on itself the day that the Doyum collide with the Labians. The Doyum-Labian mashup.
Here comes the money.
Hell!
Money talk.
He did it! Collar rush!
Dollar, dollar. Dollar, dollar. Ching, ching, chatter. You ain't talking money, then you're talking no matter.
Roast Massey.
Wait for it. Wait for it. There's a little delay.
Here comes the
money. Another one!
Here we go.
Duffhead!
Here comes the money. Money, money, money. Dollar, dollar. Dollar, dollar. Ching, ching, bling, bling, cut the chatter. You ain't talking money, then you're talking no matter.
Make America white-pilled again.
Thank you, boys. 2 of them. There's 2 of them. Make America white-pilled. Okay. All right. With 2 of them, I'll do both. I'll do the video and I will do the Massey article. But before I can do that, I do have to go do a wee little tinkle. So I'm going to give you guys a little EWBSX and I'll be back in just a few minutes. All right, we're back. I have got quiche Lorraine and bacon from Mrs. Kingpilled. And I'm ready to dive in with you guys to this interview. It's not very long. I think it's about a half an hour. 34 minutes. Trump's plan for AI dominance. This is from Joe Lonsdale, the American Optimist podcast. He is one of the founders of Palantir, the 8VC fund, the University of Austin. He is one of the OG PayPal Mafia fellows, and he's a funny guy. He's a very funny guy. And so he's interviewing here Jacob Hellberg, the guy who is leading the PAX SILICA effort. And Jacob Hellberg is, hold on a second, let me just grab his, well, I'm just going to start it, and I'm going to go get his Jacob Hellberg's biographical details for you. You're probably not quite expecting what you're about to see.
In the history of human civilization, we have never encountered a time when you had a technology that led to mass unemployment.
Many people are skeptical of AI in the US.
People would have said that personal computers would put a lot of secretaries out of work. In reality, the PC revolution gave birth to the software industry, and it displaced 3.5 million jobs, but it actually created 19 million jobs in America. For all of the noise in the press, unemployment is still below 5%. We are at the center of the biggest economic revolution in over 100 years.
Let's talk about PAX SILICA.
We are probably engaging in the biggest reorganization of the global supply chain in a very, very long time. We need to win the race for global market share, we need to win the race for innovation, and we need to win the race to secure our supply chains.
CEO and co-founder.
So that is the Silica Bismarck, Jacob Hellberg. I knew his biographical details before I listened to this, but this is the first time I'd ever heard him talk, and I was like, that was I mean, it squares with what I expected, but it's a trip listening to this. You guys will enjoy listening to this and hearing the contrast between the guy presenting the message and the message itself. This is relatively unheard in, I don't know, recent American politics, is to have the combination of this guy's voice and mannerisms with the message that he's delivering. Hellberg grew up in a Jewish family in France. He married American investor Keith Rabois, who is one of the other original PayPal Mafia guys. Keith Rabois, he married him in a 2018 ceremony officiated by businessman Sam Altman. He graduated from George Washington University with a BA and then the NYU Law in Cybersecurity Risk and Strategy program in 2020. He is 36 years old, born November 9, 1989 in France. So, Jacob Hellberg.
Race to secure our supply chains.
CEO and co-founder. Palantir co-founder Joe Lonsdale.
Undersecretary Jacob Hellberg is working with the Trump administration and Secretary Rubio on PAX SILICA. He's securing supply chains, minerals, energy, all the things we need for the AI revolution, and he's partnering with new countries to make them key allies. Who's going to grow faster? What countries are going to be left behind? What does AI diplomacy look like in the next era of American dominance? How is China pushing back? And how is America working to make sure we're positive some allies that lift up all of our allies versus China expropriating from them? Jacob Hellberg is optimistic on the U.S. and the next great American century. Welcome to American Optimist. Really excited to have my friend Undersecretary Jacob Hellberg here with us. Jacob, you're the founder of the Hill and Valley Forum. You're also an author of the Wires of War, Technology, and the Global Struggle for Power. It's good to have you here in Austin.
Joe, it's great to be here.
You were confirmed as Undersecretary last fall. What's your mission and why are you doing this?
So our core mission at the State Department in the Economic Undersecretariat is to secure our supply chains. There are three conditions we need to meet to win the AI race. We need to win the race for global market share. We need to win the race for innovation. And we need to win the race to secure our supply chains. China is on a path to decoupling from us and de-risking all of its single points of failure. It's absolutely essential. And I think the last 20 years of lived experience has shown us the importance of actually de-risking the choke points that our economy depends on. And that's why we're doing deals around the world on energy, on minerals, and on infrastructure. And it's incredibly exciting about the progress we've made.
So what's the most surprising or interesting?
It's just jarring. But you know what's funny is you could imagine that this day was going to come where you would have it would be the openly gay Jewish guys who are talking about the need to act in the interests of our own national security and secure our supply chains and develop our infrastructure and on and on. National sovereignty, because once upon a time, he would have been exactly where he is, doing exactly what he's doing. He would have just been married to a woman and, would be pretending that he's not gay. So, like, that world is better, for sure. But it's also like, this character is not completely unprecedented. This is like, this same sort of guy has been in this sort of role, doing this sort of thing for generations. But post Obergefell, with the rise of, sorry to say, the millennial generation, it was inevitable that you were going to get gay guys in government doing base things.
Thing you learned so far?
Well, the amazing thing that I've learned is just the enormous, insatiable appetite that the world has for American technology. And just last week, we signed a historic deal with the Philippines, 4,000 acres, right next to Subic Bay, where we're going to build a first of its kind AI native industrial park. And the goal is really to secure inputs that are vital for American and global supply chains. As you know, we are engaged in a massive reindustrialization effort in the US. A lot of those factories depend on so many different inputs that come from all.
We have a successful tower. Successful tower has been achieved.
Faggot? Yeah. I just did. Yeah, but would you faggot. Okay.
Nigga, we ride with Donald Trump over here, nigga.
All corners of the world. And right now there is a massive overconcentration of those inputs from China. And so the goal is we are walking and chewing gum at the same time. We need to reindustrialize at home while making sure that all the factories that are in Ohio and in Oklahoma and in Virginia actually have all of the inputs and niche motors and components that they need to keep running and actually being cost competitive. And so we're looking and triaging interest from a number of different companies in order to consider, what the long-term build out is going to look like in the Philippines. And it's very exciting to actually build this out from first principles and actually create a platform out of it.
I love it. I was there for a day in the Philippines with everyone. They're excited what you guys are doing.
Yeah, you were there right when we were in the last mile of negotiating that agreement, actually.
Well, I'm glad I didn't screw anything up for you.
No, they were actually raving about you. So
very good. The president's an interesting guy. My friends are close to the defense secretary. You got some competent pro-U.S. people over there. I'm a little worried about the impact of AI on their BPO economy, so hopefully we can build some stuff with them. It's a good ally. So you get to work closely with some interesting characters. What's it like working with Marco Rubio?
He has really set an example of professionalism at the department. The department is incredibly well run. We have no leaks. We are a very low drama department. Everyone is heads down, focused on advancing the president's agenda. We have had an incredibly successful tenure. I mean, the operation in Venezuela was incredibly historic in terms of regaining influence in our hemisphere. And we are actually raising all of the right and hard questions with Europe, which are really overdue. I went to Europe, as you know, I lived in Europe 18 years. And when my mother worked at the European Commission, believe it or not. And
wow.
So I went back to Brussels a few weeks ago and I told them, when you really love someone and someone who's sick, the empathetic thing to do is actually tell them that you're worried about them and that they're not doing well. There's nothing empathetic about self-denial and pretending like everything is completely fine when it's clearly not. And the reality is we are Europe's only ally who cares about them enough to be willing to have those hard, uncomfortable conversations. And
yet another thing to add to the list of things that I am grateful from Donald Trump, that he has brought us a world in which we are taking the sassy patriots, the children of the foreign service workers that served in Europe. We have taken the sassy patriots and inflicted them upon the Europeans, telling them about their need for therapy, telling them that they need to do a little self-care and they need to reflect on their lived experience and consider what's best for their futures. I could not think of a better use of this class.
And so I think that message was generally quite well received. Europe has not grown meaningfully in over a generation, and everyone can see it. And you travel around the world. I certainly talk to lots of people from around the world.
Think about the Europeans' reaction to hearing this sassy, cosmopolitan, gay lineal be like, Europe just hasn't grown and for forever, and everyone sees it. Hello, You're totally not like Fetch anymore. No one cares about you. You're so yesterday. Think about what that must do to the European psychology.
And it's really gained an international reputation for overregulation and low growth. And it's incredibly sad because it's a place that has given birth to so much ambition and adventure and innovation for 2,000 years. It's really, really sad to see in just 50 years, 2,000 years of civilization being unraveled.
It's really interesting because there's all these historical theories on why Europe was so dynamic. And I think there's like certain competition that's really good, that was really helpful to it. Obviously, you don't want another world war. And so I think because of the world wars, they've kind of like brought everything together, but then somehow it's just totally stagnated. And your mother what did she do for the government there earlier?
Yeah, so she was a web programmer. So she was, not really a politician at all. She was a web programmer for they call them DGs. It's basically like their equivalent of ministries, basically, for the DG Education and Culture. She had a very, sort of small, humble job as a programmer there. She was the editor-in-chief of a magazine in Paris back in the early 90s, but then left the job market for a long time because when my sister and I were growing up to be a stay-at-home mom. And so by the time she re-entered the workforce, the industry had totally changed. So she actually taught herself how to code at 47, believe it or not, and then just became a programmer. And so she was doing that. And I think, like a lot of Europeans, she really wanted to believe in the European project of the European Union. But I think it's for people who really remember what Europe was like in the 90s, it's really hard to look back at the last 30 years and conclude that Western Europe today is better off than it was 30 years ago.
So if we're talking to them, like, what are we telling them to do differently? Like what does Europe need to do in your mind to get back to where it needs to be?
Totally. And so the good news is the Draghi report, who was
Totally. Nevsky said gay French Jew. Life support unplugger said something about that seems redundant. Thrice redundant. A little bit more about his background. So his official role is Undersecretary of State for Economic Growth, Energy, and the Environment. He served as a commissioner for the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission, and he was senior advisor to Alex Karp, CEO of Palantir Technologies. He has commented extensively on U.S.-China relations and the national security implications of Chinese-developed web apps like TikTok. He was a leading advocate for the 2024 passage of the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversaries Controlled Applications Act, which forced a sale or ban of TikTok. He is the founder of the Hill and Valley Forum, a working group of American venture capitalists and lawmakers concerned about China's impact on the American technology industry.
Obviously authored by Mario Draghi, an institution of in the European establishment, really basically says exactly that Europe's economy is anemic. It needs to deregulate. It needs to put an emphasis on productivity. And any regulation in Europe needs to factor in the impact on growth. And, sometimes I hear European politicians, they run for office, they're in office, they do these interviews, and they kind of lay out these super complicated plans for, somehow reviving the economy, when in reality, it's actually not that hard. All you have to do is have a secure border, deregulate, lower taxes, and bring down the cost of energy. That's it. If you do that, investment will come pouring in. It's actually not that hard. All you have to do is have a secure border, deregulate, lower taxes, and bring down the cost of energy. All you have to do is have a secure border, deregulate, lower taxes, and bring down the cost of energy. All you have to do is have a secure border, deregulate, lower taxes, and bring down the cost of energy.
That's like, imagine someone playing you that clip like 5 years ago, hearing that phrase said in that voice. Remarkable.
All you have to do is have a secure border, deregulate, lower taxes, and bring down the cost of energy. That's it. If you do that, investment will come pouring in. You will have growth again, and you'll start to see unemployment start to decline. And Sarkozy kind of did this in the late 2000s, and France's unemployment was actually trending towards 5%, but obviously that was cut short.
It seems like there's an element related to that where they're just really negative on successful people. I don't know if it's a jealousy or it was just like criticism from sticking out, or there's something about how like there's something wrong with you if you're too successful there, which seems to be very anti-growth as well. Is that tied to it at all in your experience?
Yeah, and it's interesting because in a way, and our friend Alex Karp actually talks about this a lot, about how there's something really unique about American culture and that has given rise to Silicon Valley. And when a lot of countries have tried to replicate Silicon Valley, but there really is, to have a community like Silicon Valley, you need a certain cultural approach to risk taking. people being willing to be heretical and contrarian.
The heretical thing's really key.
And in Europe, culturally, I actually think that strand definitely used to be there when you look at, all the incredible thinkers and, researchers. But today, I think the inertia is just so strong, where if you stand out too much, you kind of get cut down, because you're ridiculed or, the press just totally goes after you. And so I think, the culture's kind of changed in a way where it really strongly disincentivizes risk taking and heterodox thinking.
I talked about this
when I when I first was exploring the whole PayPal mafia thing, and it's them beginning to roil as a political constituency. This is one thing that was very consistent: is the managerialists really fucked up when they teased a certain class of American with Silicon Valley. Like, here's a place, here's a paradise where you can go do all of your autistic experiments, where you can go move fast and break things. This is going to be like a deregulated environment out on the frontier where people can go experiment with crazy wild technologies. And they developed a culture there, a very frontier kind of renegade culture that got infiltrated and completely taken over and attempted to be strangled to death by the bureaucratic morass of the globalists. And they're the ones. You can think what you do about the Silicon Valley people and the EACs and that class of California libertarian, but they're the ones who are activated and putting their money where their mouth is. And the rest of us get to benefit from that. I have my issues with them. They're way too many of them are way too invested in India. But that's also overstated by people outside the industry looking in. In reality, much of the greatest hostility to India comes from within Silicon Valley, because they're the people who have lived with them. They're the people who have been around them. They're the ones who have experienced them. Had to deal with their code and their and like communicating with them. And so that like both things are true, that there is a huge love affair with India within the culture of Silicon Valley, but also there's a major revolt against it. And that's like where the frontier spirit of America was preserved the longest. So it's like once they've been activated, something is sweeping back across the land where they're like, that's it, fuck it, death to bureaucracy, all of you fucking green people and everyone who wants to strangle all of our industries to death, you can all go fuck yourselves. We have a moon to get to.
Where it really strongly disincentivizes risk-taking and heterodox thinking.
I talked about this with Sham earlier, and how in the Pentagon it was always the heretics who went against the bureaucracy and did the right thing and forced it through. That kind of made everything work. And it feels like in Europe right now, you're saying they're particularly against the heretics, particularly against people who think too differently right now.
Yeah, and if you look at, I follow French politics a little bit more closely than other countries, simply because, by virtue of my own background. But, they come up with these concepts, frankly, in France, for a long time, I think one of the frustrations that the public has had is that the options that a lot of people have had in politics is a left-wing leftist government and a right-wing leftist government, and there has lacked, an actual right-wing government.
Well, this is like in the UK, like the Tories and Labour, like the Tories ruled like the Democrats, and then that didn't work, so now they're going with like the far left Democrats instead.
Right, and so now you basically have, you kind of have an ecosystem of, a handful of different parties, primarily led by Marine Le Pen's party, who actually have, more right-wing viewpoints on at least on social issues, on immigration and security, and they bring.
Isn't it funny that you can tell in the way that he said that he, from his perspective, he doesn't see Marine Le Pen's party as right-wing. He's just like, it's just like a little more right-wing. It's like damning with faint praise, kind of. Trust Blansar says the lack of mea culpa from Silicon Valley for aiding woke tyranny, I think, bugs people much more than the data centers and AI and such. For sure, yeah. And part of that, there's kind of I can see both sides of this, because from the perspective of many of them, like, woke tyranny was something that was enforced on them as much or even more directly than it was on everyone else. it was never like universally popular there. There was a lot of people who felt like they were behind enemy lines, in the belly of the beast, slaving behind the worst forces of wokeness. And then from their perspective, from their experience, they're the ones who rose up and threw off woke chains. Like they're like, we're the ones who liberated Silicon Valley from wokeness, and like this is their headcanon, is that they're actually the ones who were there on the front lines that were doing the liberating, and so everyone else should be grateful that finally they rose up and overthrew it. So like clearly, I think that's a little delusional, but there's also some truth to it, and this is the thing where I think ultimately both sides are going to have to like set aside some things and just agree to meet in the middle.
Brand them as far right, and they come up with these things like the sanitary cord, as though these right-wing parties are just beyond the pale and a fundamental threat to the republic. And it's so crazy, because what you're doing is you're basically telling people and voters that if you support those parties, you are, basically, emulating, you're right there supporting the Nazis, basically, is kind of what the implication is.
Which is ironic, because you obviously support a lot of that, and you yourself are Jewish as well. So
yeah. I mean, I think the fact that we have gotten to a place where some schools of thought have emerged, and it's really a global phenomenon, where having a border is seen as being radical, and wanting to have workforce flexibility to be able to have a dynamic work environment is seen controversial, I think is really, really a shame. And I think, the interesting thing is, and frankly, I think Americans are actually pretty good at being clinical about these things. But if you just look at the evidence, countries who actually have a more capitalist approach to their economy actually outgrow and do better than countries that are more socialist. And that's just a fact. Oh. And I really wish Europeans saw that and kind of took that feedback, because it feels like they're trying everything but that.
Oh, it makes sense.
Skripneski says Jake Dolph Hellburglar. Hellburglar. My brain is going into some dark places. I'm gonna change the subject. Nematoder says you can't really blame them for hiring cheap overseas labor. It's the government's responsibility to make the rules of the game. Yeah, I mean that would definitely be a case that they would make for themselves, and I think I think that there is merit to it. It doesn't completely exonerate them, but there is merit to it. And part of this, I think it makes sense when you understand that mentality, that California libertarian mentality, because there's features and there's bugs to it. The feature to it is that it's a great place for creativity. It's a great place for sort of retaining that frontier perspective, where you have the guys who are like vibe coding stuff and surfing, and that relaxed, open California perspective. Like that lends itself very well to innovation. It's a great way to capitalize on a particular brand of autism. The downside of those types is that the very characteristics that lend toward a tolerance for risk taking and a curiosity about what doesn't exist and a desire to bring those things into existence, that naturally means that they're less rigidly attached to their own identities. And you can see this in the way that, for example, the like self-help or self-improvement culture really emerged out of that, because everyone's always looking for the next hack, the next thing to for the next diet or the next workout routine or the next piece of technology that's going to improve my life. They're always biohacking. And so this makes them feel less attached to what is now, because they're very future focused. So for them, they're not thinking about like the ethnic composition of the workforce. They're thinking about like, what's the bottom line? How can we get this done as cheap as possible? They're looking for a hack. And so then the government structurally offers them a hack, and they take advantage of it. And then it's like, oh shit, maybe not every hack is worth taking. So in many cases, many of them learned that the hard way. And so now they're coming on board. They're not, full blown throwing up Romans in the streets, but they're definitely trending back in that direction, which is good, because if that most future-focused, frontier-oriented part of the society can be, let's say, reoriented back in the general direction of at least some sense of ethnocentrism, you're talking about one of the farthest-reaching frontiers of the ethnos. So, one of the fringe components of the ethnos. So, getting them to rein themselves in, like they don't need to go full hardcore, like rabid ideological ethnocentrist. You just need them to be reined in and governed and controlled. Maximized, you might say.
Well, Jacob, you worked at Google in the past. I think it was the U.S.-China Economic Security Commission at Brookings. You were at Palantir for a little bit. How did these shape your interest right now? I guess so. You're working a lot on AI. Does that kind of lead into that?
Yeah. So it's interesting because so I worked at Google right when tech policy became a thing. It really wasn't seen as a field, an issue worth, a big topic of discussion until about, the mid to late 2010s, basically. And then, there was just all sorts of tech policy debates that started emerging. And then joining Palantir really, helped me, gave me a window into these two huge trends, the AI revolution and the global rearmament that is taking place around the world, and how technology is changing hard power. And it's really fascinating because it really shows how the asymmetric nature of technology.
How technology is changing hard power. Let me tell you about hard power.
And how you can have, really small, for a long time, our foreign policy debates were dominated by very linear thinking. So people said, China has 1.4 billion people, therefore they will inevitably, become the largest economy because if their GDP per capita, rises remotely close to ours, obviously they're going to overtake us by a lot. But that school of thought had a fundamental flaw, which is it didn't factor in for the asymmetric power of technology. It's true that China will catch up to us if you assume that we live in a world where the prevailing economic trend is convergence. As you know from the world in tech, you don't have convergence. Sometimes you have divergence, and sometimes you actually have unlinear, nonlinear growth. Yeah. And it's interesting because you can have at a micro level. You can see that with a country like Israel that has less than 20 million people, that has a bigger GDP and a stronger military than Nigeria that has 250 million people. Yeah. And it just goes to show how tiny Israel actually has a larger economy than 250 million people country.
Technology can be very divergent. It's
very divergent.
Nematoda says, I'm out here in the Bay and so many of these people have just never thought about identity. But they need it and they are primed to become patriots if it's packaged correctly. Yes. This is one thing I think maybe we need more outspoken West Coast patriots or something to speak up on this, because the West Coast mentality is very different from the rest of the country. And it was never quite as clear to me until I moved to somewhere away from the West Coast and started spending more time on the other part of the country and being around people, listening to people who are from the rest of the country. The West Coast is its own sort of thing, and I think a lot of people don't really understand it, so they kind of try to force it into one of their pre-existing categories. But there's a lot of I would say like the thing that really defines the West Coast psychology is independence. And I don't mean independence in like a base sense necessarily. They're just they kind of exist unto themselves, and so the things that they do for their own independent reasons. So for example, Northwest libtardism is its own distinct, unique brand that Northwest libtards have created for themselves. And in this sense, they actually are almost a leading indicator for the rest of the nation's libtardery. But they pursue their libtardery in their kind of their own independent way. There's a term in Seattle called the Seattle freeze, because people will go to Seattle and be taken aback by how standoffish and cold everyone is, how aloof everyone is. And it's not because people are necessarily meaner or less hospitable or anything there. It's just that there's just kind of the natural culture of just going your own way, just kind of focused. You've got your own things, you got your own priorities. Other people are doing their thing, and we're just moving around each other. There's also really, really deep streaks of the reddest country you'll ever see. But again, those types of red people, red Americans in that sense, they see themselves as inheritors of the Wild West and the frontier and the gold rush. They don't really see themselves as inheritors of a lot of the other parts of the country that happened back east. We were talking about this in the King Pill voice chat the other night, that like growing up for me, the Civil War was not something, the thing called the Civil War was not something that I necessarily felt like a direct personal stake in. beyond the fact that this was something that was definitional for the nation that I was a part of, but it was sort of like a thing that happened over there with those people. And I felt much more of a direct kinship to the frontier, the cowboys and the Indians, the Wild West, the sheriffs and their outlaws and Indian attacks, and like that was much more the Oregon Trail thing. That was what I saw much more as my heritage. And so everyone on the West Coast kind of was like sort of the far-flung, like you had to go across the wilderness to get to the furthest coast. So this far-flung remote place. And that has really informed the psychology of people in the West. So when people in the West go based, you might say, they do it in a different way than people further east in the older parts of the country. They're always going to be more kind of independent and sort of striking their own path, going it their own way. But there's also there's a kind of a pragmatism to that if you understand them and you can work with them and you can talk to them, that they're they may be a different breed, but you could still capitalize on the great talents that they have to bring to bear.
Very divergent,
especially right now.
Yeah.
So this is the moment in time where it seems very divergent. We're all living through everything going on with mythos and with productivity. I'm very bullish on productivity. It's going to reshape our country.
Totally agree.
But if you look at the polling, many people are skeptical of AI in the U.S. Like how do you think about this? What's the optimistic case for AI?
I think the optimistic case is, for all of the noise in the press, unemployment is still below 5%. And so people, keep talking about mass unemployment scenarios as though we are living in a mass unemployment environment, when the reality is the labor market is actually pretty tight. We have unfilled jobs for technicians, for lots of different fields. In manufacturing, it's really hard to hire because we have
so hard to hire. There's like 7 million unfilled vocational jobs.
That's right.
I have this very obnoxious view, which is that if you are not mentally retarded and you want to learn and work, you can get a job right now. Which I know you're not supposed to say as a politician, but that is the case right now.
There are a lot of unfilled jobs, and the data shows that unemployment is historically very, very low. We are at full employment. The IMF standard for full employment is about 5%, and we're actually below that.
I want someone to email me and tell me how they can't, if they're willing to learn and they're willing to go to vocational school, which we pay for, by the way, the government, how they can not get a job. I feel like it's just I don't understand where people are coming from. I don't know.
Yeah, and you're seeing productivity go up a lot right now. I mean, we're at 5% productivity growth, and so I think I think the bull case is, in the history of human civilization, we have never encountered a time when you had a technology that led to mass unemployment, and so there's, I think, in the debate on the future of work, I think you can look back at history and say, if you look at the computer revolution, people would have said that personal computers would have put a lot of secretaries out of work. But in reality, the PC revolution gave birth to the software industry. And it displaced 3.5 million jobs, but it actually created 19 million jobs in America.
I'm definitely paying for.
This is yes, this is exactly the thing that I've been harping on with respect to AI and jobs. Look at this. I just looked this up. So this is in the 1920s. This is Los Angeles' famed Hollywood sign. It once advertised land parcels during LA's real estate boom of the 1920s. So just 100 years ago. Go look at any of the west or east of the Mississippi. If you go back and you look at cities 100 years ago, they're going to look, there's more people, there's more development stuff, but they're going to look like cities, very highly populated cities. This was 100 years ago in Los Angeles. It was actually Hollywood land that was advertising Hollywood land, the land that was available up here and out into the valley. Here's the valley, north of LA, 100 years ago. A bunch of sprawling farmland. And then there was something else in here. In 1920, a seemingly innocuous event occurred. Los Angeles surpassed San Francisco in population for the first time. The difference wasn't very large by today's standards, just 70,000 more residents, but it was a sign of things to come. Up until then, San Francisco had been considered the leading city west of the Mississippi, thanks to the gold rush of 1849, which had transformed it from a sleepy hamlet of 200 to a bustling metropolis of 25,000 in just 2 years. By the end of the 1920s, however, LA's population would double in size and snatch San Francisco's position as the West Coast's fastest growing city. So think about that. In 1849, San Francisco had a population of 200. In 2 years, it went to 25,000. And then it took 75 years for the U.S. or for Los Angeles to pass it in population. So only 100 years ago. That's how new the West Coast is in a historical timeline. People writing the histories of America centuries from now will view the early 2000s as the time when the West was going from rugged to like populated and flourishing, and it's on its way up. And everything that's happening right now will look like a blip on that radar, but it's still very much, just like the American Empire is very much just coming into its ascendancy, the West Coast of the United States is only just emerging from frontier days.
For a lot of administrative assistance right now for various things.
Exactly.
Not just for myself, but for all my teams and for everyone. It seems like we're still using them. So part of your job as Undersecretary, Jacob, is to examine how AI and other advanced technologies impact geopolitics. Like, how's this changing national security, balance of power? What does it mean for these things?
Well, it's going to mean that, and the interesting thing is we launched PAX SILICA, which is a fundamentally different grouping than the G7 and the G20. And the G7, which is obviously an artifact of the Cold War, you're really seeing diverging growth. And because AI is productivity means growth. And so economies that are leaning into AI are actually growing a lot faster than economies who aren't. And what we're seeing is the PAX SILICA countries are growing roughly around 4% year on year, compared to G7 countries that are growing somewhere in the zone of 1%.
Wow.
And that kind of diverging growth is likely to lead to, if you extrapolate that for a decade, it's likely to lead to a very different map 10 years from now.
You're saying 4 versus 1% right now. That's the average. And so, because that means you're doubling in 18 years versus doubling in 70 years.
That's right.
One generation of this and you're a totally different country.
Totally different country.
Which is what happened to Europe, by the way, is they don't realize they're the poorest relative to all of our states because we've just been growing so much faster for a generation.
Yes. And they think that they're not doing that badly because, they're in a low growth environment, but they're not in a recession. And so they think it's not a crisis. But when the rest of the world is growing at 3%, it actually is a crisis because you are becoming relatively poorer than everyone else.
How do you assess China's capabilities in the AI race?
So, it's interesting because China is, without a doubt, our most formidable competitor. Their superpower is their incredibly deep manufacturing ecosystem.
Trust Plansar saw a thread that there's about to be a major deficit for merchant marine crew. Can get a 100K plus job within 2 years with no prior qualifications and can live anywhere and get half the year off. Might take that up. Hell yeah. Do it. There are for adventurous, enterprising young men of great competence. There are a litany of opportunities that are lurking beneath the surface, and those who capitalize on them right now are going to. They're going to be like Starship. They are going to launch themselves ahead of everyone else over the next couple of decades.
With that being said, our software companies are better by a lot. I mean, we are objectively leading in AI and in model development. China has a lot of problems. They're at a macroeconomic level, their economy is really not doing well. They are decelerating at home. Their data is really falsified, and they actually tried to hide their books so much so that they've made it illegal for people within China to ask too many questions or do due diligence on their economic indicators.
This is what people don't realize is in China, they just make a lot of this illegal to ask and figure out.
It's their economic indicators are untethered from reality, and they're not growing at 4 or 5%, whatever the official number is. And so their economy is not doing well. And so the interesting thing is that they are actually entering a phase where they're becoming a little bit more akin to where the Soviet Union was back in the late 70s, which is low growth, but still very, very technologically formidable.
I mean, there's amazing things they're doing with innovation and manufacturing, obviously. Like there's certain areas where I think they are even ahead of us. But then I think when you have a communist economy, and Xi Jinping really is much more of a commie than any of us, I expected anyway, 10 years ago, it just breaks things, I guess,
Yeah, and I always find it interesting when people overseas want to invest in China, because every successful person in China, all they want to do is get their money out of China. And so to me, And
this is one thing that kind of went underreported in the talks at the summit with Trump and Xi is one of the frameworks that they talked about was actually expanding more Chinese investment into the United States, which is if you have the perspective of like you're fearful and you're guarded and you're like on the defensive, then you're like, oh no, they're buying our land. But I think a better appreciation of the dynamic at play here is that this is actually kind of like a poison pill. It's sort of a poison pill and also I don't know, an opportunity, a kind of a get out of jail with less penalty opportunity for China, because they've intentionally structured their system to try to trap capital within China as much as possible, but they can only do that for so long. And eventually, like you're saying, people who are in China want to get their money out of China, and so they're constantly kind of playing whack-a-mole and keeping their money locked in China. If they expand that, if that opens up, then you're going to see a very quick normalization in relationships, economic relationships between China and the rest of the world, and especially between China and the United States. So getting Chinese investment into the United States is actually a way of opening China up and breaking them down, not allowing them to keep running this game where they trap as much capital and generate as much artificial capital as they can within that trapped constraint and drive it into productive capacity as much as possible, basically betting that we can outproduce the what we're taking from future from the future seed corn or whatever. We can actually we're taking that and we're investing it in productive capacity, so we'll be able to outproduce it. They can only run that game for so long before eventually they're going to need to start, for the sake of their own social stability, both allowing their own citizens to begin putting money outside of China, and also incentivizing them to consume more of their own production.
Why would you want to put your money in a country that doesn't believe in the right of private property, and where all of the elites want to basically, find clever ways of getting their money out of the country? To me, that's obviously a red flag. But they have really wrecked their economy. But they're never to be underestimated, because their manufacturing ecosystem is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, I guess they have these free economic zones that you just get way ahead and that we partnered with for a generation. So, so they have some advantages there. It's
basically China needs to create a middle class, and the United States needs to reinvigorate its middle class. And both of them doing that at the same time actually is mutually beneficial to both sides in broad strokes.
kind of sad. I kind of wish that they weren't communists and we could work with them, because there's so many amazing Chinese people there who are so talented. But I think for now, it's
a lot of them in Silicon Valley.
Well, we get this. That's the power of Silicon Valley. Yeah, it's for sure. So let's talk about PAX SILICA. This is something you created with Secretary Rubio. Like, what does AI diplomacy look like? What are you guys doing here?
So PAX SILICA.
That a lot of them in Silicon Valley. That's a sword that cuts multiple directions. There's a case to be made that from a national security perspective, it's actually prudent to allow the Chinese spying through their students' apparatus to continue, because it's an open secret and everyone knows it, and so you can actually run like counterintelligence ops on them. So then the question becomes from a diplomatic standpoint, using Chinese students as a trade chip can be done in multiple ways. It can be, we're going to hold you to this because we're going to use this as a way of tethering you, holding you accountable. We're going to run counterintelligence ops on so you send spies, and then we're going to spy on your spies, and you bring your spies back, and we're going to go spy on them since we know who the spies are. There's kind of an interesting game theory at work with the whole Chinese students thing.
Is an economic security coalition with a group of now 14 countries that each bring unique industrial capabilities to bear to help secure our supply chains. We want to take a holistic approach, an ecosystems-based approach to supply chain security. And so one of our first big flagship efforts is the rollout of this economic security zone in the Philippines. Part of what we're looking to do is actually partner with countries to have a product-driven approach to foreign policy. China basically has done the Belt and Road Initiative for 25 years now. And it's basically, the Chinese government has these state-owned enterprises and in-house where they basically, implement a lot of these big capital-intensive industrial projects. For us, it doesn't make sense for America to do that because that's not our strong suit. The government's not good at doing things in-house. What we're really good at is we have companies that make really great products. And so we want to lean into our unique strengths by having a product-based approach to foreign policy. And so as the government, we want to create the right environment and the right incentives and create platforms on top of which companies can build. So
sounds like some sort of a fusion between the state and private industry wonder if there's a term for that.
The economic security zone is our big, first platform. We're planning on rolling out 3 more by the end of June, and ultimately, we're going to make a big play in logistics. We're going to make a big play in minerals, and they're all going to connect together. And so,
I love it.
Everyone watching, if they're interested in building really, really fast, we know a place where they can do it.
So, I mean,
You could what you're watching here is you're just watching a guy. Like he's a mouthpiece for some software company that's talking about their go-to-market plan, and he's the salesman. He's like a sales pitch here for your software product, except actually he's working for the government to build out national supply chains and defense contracts, and there's a it's kind of a little reminiscent to FDR pulling in all of the best and brightest from around the country and putting them to work, electrifying the Tennessee Valley or what have you. There's a little rhyme there.
Building really, really fast. We know a place where they can do it.
So, I mean, this kind of reminds me of the original Industrial Revolution, where it started really in the UK and then it spread very quickly to Europe and to America. And back then, I think there was a lot more freedom in general. So you kind of already you didn't really need free economic zones, because the countries were basically free economic zones. I mean, on the margin after the Enlightenment, and it really lifted up those parts of the world so much faster than everything else. And so now we have a new industrial revolution. It's definitely centered in the U.S. And is this a way to help spread that industrial revolution to our partners? It supports us, but supports them too, I'd imagine.
And it's actually very mutually beneficial, because obviously this is, for the Philippines, this is going to be jobs, investment, and making sure that the Philippines is a key anchor in the global technology supply chain. For us, it means that our companies and our factories and all of the operations that we are building out here in the US, hundreds of billions of dollars in investments, will never be held hostage by an adversarial foreign power. We need the inputs in order to keep our factories running here, and that's why we're doing this.
Is there any chance that the EU would have some free economic zone to be part of PAX?
They need it.
You do it if they wanted to?
We're actually talking with one EU country. I don't want to get them in trouble, so I won't say which one.
Can you get around Brussels for a free economic zone? That seems tough.
But they're really, really interested. A lot of national. So the fascinating thing about Europe is a lot of national governments actually really want to do the right thing and are very pragmatic about their economy. The challenge is that they have to deal with a supranational European Commission that arrogates more and more power away from national governments by passing a new regulation.
They're like, okay, guys, we're gonna have a free economic zone, but it's gonna be 32-hour work weeks. We're gonna have African migrants.
Other than that, it's free.
And there's gonna be free operations for trans people.
By free economic zone, they mean everything has to be free.
Oh man. Well, I hope for Europe's sake you can get them to do that. But this obviously makes sense for Philippines. I hear maybe something with Israel. I've been allowed to say that. What else? Who else is part of this?
Yeah.
It's very interesting seeing in the as part of the federal government now, suddenly we have a big framework being built out here around this network of free economic zones that is being employed, directed by guys who are part of, directly adjacent to the PayPal mafia. Because this has been a huge Peter Thiel thing for a long time, is trying to set up different special economic zones for technological development, and it was done kind of in light of we're gonna carve out this separate from the existing governing system. We're gonna have this free, in a libertarian or anarchic sense, we're gonna have this free sovereign location that has its own laws and everything. And Prospero in Honduras was one of these. There's a bunch of people who are in and around the whole Thiel orbit who have been working on this kind of thing, ties into seasteading and libertarian theory and stuff is kind of the origin point of a lot of this. But this seems to be a more pragmatic version. Once you've actually got your guys in power, then you can actually do this as an official diplomatic process through the official channels of the government. Set up this network of these free economic zones that are specifically targeted at rapid economic development, and it flies directly in the face of the globalists, the Davos regime.
So we want to have one in every hemisphere. We think it makes a lot of sense, and we obviously want them to be connected. And so we're having lots of really great conversations with a number of our partners. We hope to basically reach that goal before the end of the year.
Amazing. Well, maybe given what we're doing in Venezuela, who knows? You could do stuff there too. It could be exciting.
The sky's the limit.
And you said, I think there's 3 core pillars. I guess you say there's principles, partnership, and policy. Like what does that mean?
Yeah. So we started with the declaration in December, and that declaration was really an articulation of our first principles that we share. What are the core, the North Star that we want to work towards, and the things that are really going to bind us together. And so obviously there's a lot of clauses in there about having a pro-innovation approach to regulation. There's a lot on supply chain security and the protection of critical infrastructure. Then we want to basically take those principles and say, okay, how do we translate this into action? And so we decided to set up 2 work streams, one on policy and one on projects. The one on projects are the products that I mentioned earlier, the idea of having 3 or 4 different key flagship projects that we want to productize and roll out to the rest of the PAX SILICA ecosystem. And then policy workflows are conversations that we have to have around the protection of intellectual property, the protection of sensitive technology, critical infrastructure, and the promotion of an AI-friendly regulation agenda.
Awesome. And I know from speaking earlier, you were telling my wife how positive you are on this administration. You spoke, of course, very highly of Secretary Rubio. Like what else? Who else is in the administration that you get to work with? Like, what's the dynamic like working with the White House?
This is being able to really, like, the development of a project like this is challenging. It's like striking at the very root of the bureaucratic, managerial, regulatory capture system that's actually been a key node and in both protecting entrenched political power and in gating or amassing resources for that entrenched power. The whole managerial system relied upon essentially the ability to gate industries and to gatekeep industries, to gatekeep financial flows. And so there's the matter of just merely creating this sort of a thing that bypasses all of that really capitalizes on unregulated, sandboxed, unregulated development over like pursuing a particular ethos. And then there's the mere fact of that the existence of that now gives you a clear A/B test in the real world that's just going to further diminish the demand for the services that were being provided by the regime. Essentially, the regime was speaking of the regime properly, like the whole globalist project was like, we're going to be the managers. We're the best at managing everything. So we're going to be the ones who manage everything. We're the keepers of the estate. You all go off and you do your thing and you don't pay attention to us, and we'll keep the estate, and we'll move the pieces around and execute all the financial transactions and everything. But it's become completely evident that the keepers of the estate were totally corrupt and were skimming and had built themselves their own estate that's parasitizing from the estate that they're supposed to be managing. It's a total betrayal of fiduciary duty. So you get this alternative model that's set up now that is now the B to the A when you're A/B testing it. And then it's who do you want to be your manager now? It's completely eliminating the demand for that managerial class, not just creating an alternative to it, but comprehensively BTFOing it, like middle fingers to the face.
Yeah, I mean, this is an incredibly unique administration. It is such high caliber. As we were catching up earlier, Secretary Rubio has really brought a sense of professionalism to the department that has really been phenomenal. And the undersecretaries work very, very hard to really emulate that standard of professionalism throughout our undersecretariats.
You're not supposed to be making jokes about any of this stuff.
About any of
professionalism means you can't just start speaking appropriately about things.
Exactly.
Okay, I won't push you on it then.
But Secretary Lutnick has taken such an entrepreneurial and industrious approach to the Commerce Department.
It really is like having a bunch of like industrialists and business people in the government right now. Huh?
Yeah, we have a team of executives, and they're really doing an unbelievable job.
Is there anything that's like particularly annoying about working in DC?
It's hard for me to say because I feel like I live out of my office. So
one other thing about the Silicon Valley types is, like, regardless of political persuasion or personal life or whatever, one thing they tend to have a pretty high selection filter for is agency. So the people who are successful within that world, almost by definition, it was starting to change. The way the culture was getting more managerialized and sort of frozen. They were changing the filters, but one of the things that persisted is agency, being like very driven, motivated, married to your work, very high executive capacity. So this was another one of the factors that, as I was sort of evaluating this new constituency, making a move for the crown, I recognize that this is a culture that's known for innovation and move fast and break things, and what comes with that is high levels of agency. Lots of it has its downsides, but I think you can see this very clearly that this sort of force being added into the administration has fed into the administration's ability to executing libtards.
I don't really know what it's like to live in DC because I basically spend my days between the Harry Truman building and my house. But hopefully I'll get a little bit more absorbed in the tapestry of the city.
I won't make you give us anything negative. But I mean, just even speaking offline, obviously you're very positive on what's going on. You guys are having a hugely positive impact. And is China trying to push back on PAX SILICA at all? Are there like adversarial things you're experiencing at all?
I don't think they're thrilled about it. But that's okay. I mean, they don't expect us to not compete. I mean, I think that's just kind of baked into the cake. The president has been clear that he wants to have a positive, constructive relationship with Xi Jinping, and he does. They actually have a very good rapport. That doesn't mean that we're not going to compete. And I think everyone kind of understands that. We're always going to put America first. And, so we can do both at the same time.
I feel like when we say we put America first, we're also partnering with our allies to lift them up. Like we're very positive somewhere. So if you look at China's Belt and Road and you go to these countries, they're very negative on the Belt and Road because it's almost like they went there and the Chinese people built it themselves with their own labor and their own restaurants and their own stuff, and they extracted for their economy, but they didn't go there to lift people up. And right now, all the Belt and Road loans are coming due and no one can pay them. It's a big crisis right now. They're trying to get money at the IMF. So it does seem like our approach is a lot more positive sum than theirs. Is that your experience?
This is a fundamental difference between the American approach and the approach that the Chinese have had. And I think part of that might be because China has used state-owned enterprises so much. Our private companies are very positive sum because they work through joint ventures. They have lots of partnerships with lots of companies around the world.
Yeah, you only win if everyone wins.
It's funny that people will think about and talk about China as if there's like deep, storied, ancient civilization, and the Chinese history in terms of the Chinese ethnicity is of course, like, people have lived within the borders of what's called China for a very long time, and there's lots of history that's there. But China as a state entity is very, very new, very young, much younger than the United States. It just came about in the last century. So there's one thing about that China are viewed as this like big evil boogeyman, super conniving and scheming, when actually they're kind of bumbling. They're a little like they don't have a theory of mind for non-Chinese people, so they just sort of just do their thing. And to the extent that people don't have another alternative, or they are looking the other way or just acquiescing to them, like, the Chinese are very effectively like any sort of herd organism. They are very effectively going to fill empty space. But they're kind of just like running on their Chinese programming, and it's kind of ham-fisted. And ultimately, because they are very ethnocentric, their grip on a given region is going to be kind of tenuous because nobody likes them and nobody wants them around at scale. So it opens up a great opportunity. Basically, the whole Belt and Road Initiative, it's the biggest threat to it was the fact that the biggest threat about it was that it was essentially unopposed. It was not just that, but it was largely being driven by factions of the same regime who were within China. China was built up from the outside. It was China, the modern China was constructed by outside forces collaborating with inside forces. So really all it takes is just like having a credible alternative and not being asleep at the wheel.
Wins together.
Exactly. And And so, our companies are very comfortable partnering with others. And I think, especially in the tech industry, people really believe in a growing pie. So there isn't this view that, people are trying to basically compete to get a bigger slice of a shrinking, shrinking pile of wealth. They believe that the pie grows. And so, and so that really is a fundamental difference between us and China.
I love that about what you're doing. You really are we care about our partners. We care about the Philippines and others doing well and succeeding, and we're going to help them do that with our work here. And I think that's a fundamental core. When I'm in the palace with the president there, we can honestly say that we care about them winning, because otherwise it's like, what are we doing with this? We started this podcast to push back against cynics and doomers. And what do you think you can achieve during your time in Washington that's positive? A lot of people say, oh, nothing's getting done. You're obviously very optimistic on it. What do you think the future of America looks like because of the work you're doing there?
I'm actually incredibly optimistic. I mean, this administration is laying the foundations for the next, several decades of American success. We are at the center of the biggest economic revolution in over 100 years. And that is really directly thanks to the president's policies on energy, on accelerated permitting, on tax incentives with full capex expensing, and on trade, creating the environment to make sure that America is the birthplace and the engine of the AI revolution. It has been incredible. And I think you really see that just by how resilient the economy is, the American economy is, despite global headwinds. We're taking steps that will actually, that help secure our hemisphere. And then economically, I mean, we are probably engaging in the biggest reorganization of the global supply chain in a very, very long time. And so, this economic security zone that we're doing in the Philippines, as well as the critical minerals deals that we're doing around the world, and PAX SILICA, the partnerships that we're doing through PAX SILICA are going to completely rechange the map of the global supply chain. And what that means is the picture for global trade flows will be very different in the future. And so we're present at the creation in a lot of ways, and it's a very exciting thing.
Awesome. Well, Jacob, we're grateful for the work you're doing with the president and Secretary Rubio and everyone else in the administration. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
So you guys are now, however many of you there are that have watched this, are added to the 9,000 people. Only 9,000 people who have watched this interview. We're a member of the administration who's directly involved in this great project, the PAX SILICA project, is just saying straight up, reorganizing global trade flows, completely restructuring the global order. All right, and the last thing I promised you guys, since you guys did hit the tip goal, we are going to do 2 drawings at the end of this. 2 drawings. 2 different people are going to win 10% of whatever the total tip take is. That's 10% each, a total of 20%. 10% each. Make sure you go to forum.kingpill.com and get your name on there so you can be included in the drawing, which I will do after we read this article. Thomas Massey's Dead End Libertarianism. I saw this because Ronald Dodson shared it, and it is written by Tory anarchist Daniel McCarthy, often a regular member, or not a member, but a regular guest on the Tom Woods Show, for those who have partaken in that in the past. So please do tips.kingpill.com. You can add to the goal still. There is yet more that could be done, and that just adds to the winnings of 2 lucky individuals. After I finish reading about Thomas Massey's Dead End Libertarianism, this is in Compact Magazine from Daniel McCarthy. 10 years into Donald Trump's takeover of the Republican Party, his opponents continue to misunderstand and underestimate him. The defeat of Thomas Massey in his contest for re-nomination to Congress on Tuesday is yet more proof of this. Trump is doing exactly what his critics a decade ago said needed to be done. He is restoring discipline to a party that had become institutionally weak. Massey was a symptom of that weakness. He arrived in Congress at a time when the GOP was divided and directionless, and at first Massey seemed to be a part of the answer to the party's woes. But the alternative he represented was stillborn, for reasons the Kentucky congressman's supporters and critics alike should take the time to understand. Doing so will help them appreciate Trump. During the George W. Bush years, the Republican Party seemed to have a coherent worldview, one derived from a broader consensus among educated Americans. Democrats, as well as Republicans, had learned to cherish capitalism, though leaders in both parties believed government had a benevolent role to play in making the best of markets. Bush Republicans favored policies to promote homeownership, for example, the cornerstone of the Opportunity Society. The Bush-era vision was Reaganism without the rough edges, compassionate conservatism. The framing is important. This Republican Party wanted to be loved, even by its enemies. Some might say that applied to foreign policy as well. After 9/11, President Bush made a point of calling Islam a religion of peace. The war he launched in Afghanistan was not retaliatory. It was swiftly revealed to be an open-ended commitment to turning that tribal society into a liberal democracy. The war Bush began in Iraq was the same. Secure in the knowledge that liberal democracy was both right and inevitable for the entire planet, hadn't Francis Fukuyama said so? There was no fear that prolonged occupations might prove futile. Hadn't we turned Japan and West Germany into good democracies after World War II? In fact, faced with the choice between rebuilding the American way or rebuilding the Soviet way, those peoples had acted according to their own priorities, not ours. Afghanistan in the 1980s also opted for American aid against Soviet tyranny, then promptly succumbed to the Taliban once the Soviets were beaten. The Bush Republican ideology was discredited by the Bush Republican Party's performance. It couldn't win the wars it started, and the consequence of promoting easy credit for uncreditworthy homebuyers was a housing bubble and catastrophic collapse of major lending institutions. Meanwhile, it turned out that the capitalism enriching the world enriched communist China along with everyone else, even as it diminished the exceptionalism of American wealth. Nor did it win its cultural battles at home. Progressives pursued the imposition of same-sex marriage on the entire country through every means possible, and after they got it, which finally happened during the Obama years, they escalated the struggle to a war over the very meaning of man and woman. With the failure of Bush Republicanism, what could come next? The pundit class's answer was a nebulous thing called reform conservatism. The GOP's activist base preferred the Tea Party, a fight against Washington's crony capitalism and a return to Reaganism's rough edges. Neither of these post-Bush ideologies had much to say about foreign policy. But Thomas Massie was aligned with a movement that did have a clear vision for foreign as well as domestic policy. So you've got the GOP pundit class has reform conservatism, this nebulous thing. The activist base has the Tea Party. And then Thomas Massie is part of a third thing that had a clear vision for foreign as well as domestic policy. In 2008, the Texas Republican Congressman Ron Paul had found a surprising degree of grassroots support when he mounted a presidential campaign explicitly criticizing the Bush-era policy agenda, including the wars that no other GOP contender for the White House dared to criticize. The 2008 Republican Party looked to figures like John McCain and Rudy Giuliani to supply a post-Bush foreign policy, yet Paul defied them and propounded an alternative. His strictly non-interventionist views were of a piece with his opposition to virtually all domestic federal activity beyond what the strictest interpretation of the Constitution would allow. Republicans didn't adopt Paul's view en masse, but with Democrats in full control of Congress since the 2006 midterms, and Barack Obama in the White House, a strictly oppositionist ideology could find a niche in the GOP. The 2010 midterms brought a wave of new Tea Party Republicans into office, and along with them came a handful of more or less explicitly Ron Paul Republicans, including the congressman's son Rand, who was elected to the U.S. Senate from Kentucky. 2 years later, with Obama on his way to re-election and the Republican Party at such a loss for leadership that Mitt Romney would be the most its presidential primaries could produce, Thomas Massie won a special election and subsequently a full term in the U.S. House, overlapping only briefly with Ron Paul, who retired in January of 2013. McCain had not supplied any new vision for the Republican Party, and Mitt Romney likewise failed to do so. The Tea Party was an exercise in negative partisanship, anti-Obama and anti-Democrat, but a leaderless movement that couldn't steer a party, only complicate the efforts of anyone else attempting to do so. The House GOP was itself effectively leaderless for a decade, cycling through a series of speakers, John Boehner, Paul Ryan, Kevin McCarthy, who were despised by, and had good reason to fear, the party's backbenchers. The House GOP caucus was a riot of factions, none of which possessed enough authority to wield power. The Senate was a little better. If Mitch McConnell's long tenure as Republican leader in the upper chamber was secure, individual senators increasingly became brands unto themselves. The party's divisions were on full display in the 2016 presidential primaries, clotted with so many candidates the debates had to be broken up into separate tiers based on polling. Rand Paul was one of that year's contenders. He diluted his father's uncompromising libertarianism and performed worse than his father had in 2008 or 2012. Ron Paul Light wasn't what the GOP was looking for, then or now. Ron Paul's appeal from the beginning had been his unwillingness to compromise, and therefore his freedom to criticize anyone and everyone else in the party. This was a necessary function at a time when the party had to be forced to confront its failures as the party of the Bushes, and when it kept trying to avoid that confrontation by nominating a McCain and a Romney. But most Republican voters, to say nothing of lawmakers, were never going to adopt Paul's strictly libertarian constitutionalism as their own program. This left Congress's handful of hardline liberty Republicans in limbo. If they moved toward the mainstream, as Rand Paul did, they became difficult to distinguish from every other wannabe Ronald Reagan, with foreign policy being the clearest difference, but one few voters cared about in isolation. This worked to Massey's benefit in the House. He may have been much less interventionist than the typical Republican, including the typical Kentucky GOP voter, but that wasn't something that mattered much in an ordinary primary or red state general election. See, the thing that the people, the reason why the Ron Paul message resonated with people was generally, by and large, just because it was a middle finger. But it was kind of a futile middle finger. It wasn't like an effectual, it wasn't a productive middle finger. It wasn't like we're leaving and we're flipping you the bird behind us as we go. It was just like kind of sitting on the sidelines and being just like, yeah, fuck you, give me something else. Boo, throwing tomatoes. Give us something better. So the anti-war thing, yeah, a lot of the anti-war people have really gotten out over their skis and they're like, oh, the entire base is anti-war. This Ron War is a disaster. Everyone is abandoning ship. The 2024 coalition is gone. No, because the 2024 coalition wasn't built on people who have some sort of an ideological, rigid anti-war posture. People just were like, they were anti-war. When someone said, oh yeah, I'm anti-war, it's because it's like, oh yeah, I'm a good person that doesn't like bad things. And my experience with war is the Bush way of doing war. Yeah, I don't like that. That's terrible. But it's not some rationalized, like principled anti-war position to where people are going to be like, oh, he did a war. He did a war. He said he wasn't going to do a war, and he did a war, and I'm anti-war. These people wildly, wildly overstate their own influence. Conventional wisdom among Trump's detractors says he only won the 2016 nomination because the Republican field was so divided. But the field was, of course, no more divided for Trump than it was for every other candidate. Why shouldn't someone else have succeeded because of the large field? The most that can be said for this canard is that too many candidates were all trying to be the same thing, while Trump was defiantly alone in being different. Yet even that would not have helped if he hadn't been different in ways that voters liked. They liked his hardline views on immigration. They liked his willingness to denounce the Bush foreign policy in terms hardly less vivid than Ron Paul had once used, though Trump's objections were not about whether the wars were unconstitutional, but about why they weren't won. That's it right there. Nobody gives a shit about whether or not the war is unconstitutional. They only care about whether or not the war is won. It's that simple. Anybody who fancies themselves the new up-and-comer because suddenly America is anti-war, you got to grapple with this. They don't give a shit about whether it's unconstitutional. They're not anti-war, they're anti-losing wars. Trump's politics is cohesive, though not in the way well-educated ideologues expect. Trump sees the world in terms of winners and losers, and those categories apply to the global economy as well as to real estate deals, television ratings, and political races, and wars. Americans had been turned into losers by their leaders, and Republicans in particular had been played for suckers. Trump promised to change that. He would restrict immigration, conduct foreign policy along different lines, and give up worrying about how to be a kinder, gentler Reaganite. He was prepared to be neither. He would abandon small government rhetoric as well as claptrap about how diversity is strength. He didn't care if he gave offense. Neither did the voters. He supplied a new vision for the party, one just as well adapted to the era of globalism as the Bush republicanism that came before it. Only this vision was adapted to the dark side of globalism, not the hopes and pipe dreams of the late 1990s. The Tea Party and the Ron Paul-inspired Liberty Republican movement of the 2010s had been galvanized by the financial crisis. But MAGA was animated by the crisis of globalism itself. The question of what a nation could even mean in a world of mass migration and fully mobile capital. There might well be another financial crisis, but the crisis of globalization is ongoing. Though it may be more salient at some times than others, it never goes away. And here's the thing, a world of mass migration and fully mobile capital is like the libertarian wet dream. This is ultimately why libertarians are not right-wing. Even if there are people who call themselves libertarians and consider themselves personally right-wing, they are apparently incapable of grokking the fundamental incoherence of their worldview. If you start from the basis of the non-aggression principle, you arrive at a world of mass migration and fully mobile capital. And then you no longer have a nation. So there is no such thing as a libertarian nation. You could have a nation that's full of people who are of libertarian temperament and who like to practice libertarian values in their personal relationships with other people. But by definition, a nation cannot be libertarian. The Republican Party was a mess when Trump found it, and it resisted his efforts to set it in order. He was unprepared for how disloyal members of his own administration would prove to be. The weakness that had characterized the Republican Party since 2008, if not earlier, had given rise to factions, interests, and personalities that all pursued their own agendas. The ghost of Bush Republicanism had not yet been completely exorcised. Failed attempts at replacing Bushism still haunted the party too, unable to win over the party as a whole, but defiant of any attempt to by stronger leadership to bring order to the party's wilderness. Trump had a very tough time in his first term as a result, and his party suffered staggering losses in the 2018 midterms. Though Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama had all suffered disastrous midterms of their own. Not only was it incumbent on Trump to restore party discipline, it was the duty of factions within the party to help him do so. A duty they owed to themselves as much as to the party's voters and the country. The hard work confronting libertarian-leaning Republicans was to find the place where they and their principles could fit in the remade party. That was work that would require compromise in the near term to realize long-term objectives. And nowhere was that more true than in foreign policy, where the path to a less interventionist, if not non-interventionist disposition, would not be a straight line. Liberty-minded Republicans would also have to make the voters' priorities their own. Massey wasn't an open borders libertarian, and he wasn't beaten by Ed Gowrine on Tuesday because he refused to support E-Verify. But Massey hadn't made himself seem indispensable to the immigration restrictionists in the party's base. He'd made himself the poster boy for balancing the budget. That wasn't what voters cared about most. Nor were the Epstein files, whose release was another cause Massey made himself synonymous with. As for foreign policy, by antagonizing pro-Israel voters as well as Trump, Massey forfeited the opportunity to help shape his party's stances on war and peace. There's more to foreign policy than Israel and Iran, after all, even at a time when the country is embroiled in a Middle East conflict. Trump is changing America's posture to the world in historic ways. Liberty Republicans could have been part of that process, helping to make peace through strength a reality. Some libertarian-leading Republicans in the administration are doing that. The representatives who should have been MAGA's peace wing in Congress chose to treat this moment like 2003 instead. To change government, including foreign policy, requires more than a single U.S. senator or a couple of House members. It requires a party led by a president. Anything else is just a protest movement. Libertarian-leaning Republicans like Massey had a golden opportunity to make their case to the party base in the 2010s, and having failed to expand beyond the numbers Ron Paul reached in 2008 and 2012, they had a second chance to be a part of a coalition that actually had a mandate to remake the party, thanks to Trump. Instead of being targets for MAGA, they could have played a part in picking MAGA's targets. Rand Paul and Thomas Massey chose not to. Fair enough. Massey made his choice and has received his judgment from the voters. Rand Paul goes before them in 2028. But how is losing a primary meant to advance the cause of liberty or restraint in foreign policy? If they couldn't capitalize on the libertarian moment, what did they expect to achieve by themselves in an era of MAGA dominance? How is losing a primary meant to advance the cause of liberty or restraint in foreign policy? Very good question. I am going to lose a primary. Okay, and then what? We are going to vote for Democrats. Okay, and then what? The Republican Party of the future may become less supportive of Israel if present trends among younger voters continue. But anti-Zionism already has a home in Democratic primaries, where it fits perfectly with the anti-colonialist, anti-Western principles of the left. Although it troubles many friends as well as foes of Israel to say so, Israel itself is part of a much larger question about peoples, homelands, and historic justice in the globalized conditions of the 21st century. Thank you! So true! Americans have to take a side on that question, which has the greatest bearing on domestic as well as foreign policy. MAGA knows where it stands, as does the left. Full-on open borders libertarians and neoliberal globalists know where they stand too. The likes of Massey are a lot less certain. The young right, its views on Israel notwithstanding, doesn't seem to be in much doubt, unless its anti-Zionism overrides its anti-globalism. Many friends of mine are diehard Massey supporters. I understand where they're coming from, but not where they think they're going. Some appear content to live forever in 2003 or 2013, refighting the battles they lost 10 or 20 years ago. They would do more for their cause if they tried to make the best of MAGA. Trump has turned the GOP into a real party again for the first time in decades. That party has a chance to change things, for better or worse. Which it will be depends on who is in the mix. That is true for the country too, and is the point of self-government. It's hard work. Daniel McCarthy is a distinguished fellow in conservative thought at the B. Kenneth Simon Center for American Studies at the Heritage Foundation. There's a good framing here. Unless its anti-Zionism overrides its anti-globalism. It's pretty clear this is the op right now. The globalists, in an attempt to combat what they see as an insurgent anti-globalism, are trying to amplify anti-Zionism into something that can kneecap the anti-globalist movement. It's really pretty clear. So the anti-Zionists see themselves as anti-globalists. They think they're the ones fighting the big great Satan, when in reality they have become the shock troops for the big great Satan, or the big gay Satan, you might say. Very, very good article. Soberly written by a clever man, Daniel McCarthy. Mongoloid says, right, I can be anti-both. Right now, the bigger enemy is globalism. Right. Alrighty. Well, that is all I've got now. I do not have any more tabs in the stack. So I do believe that it is time to do a drawing. 2 names. Let me make sure I got one name to add on here. We had a new sign up. So let me add this, and then we have 31 names. And where are we at with the total? 586. So we'll say, we'll just say 600. 600. So two $60 gift cards in the from the retailer of your choice. Those are up for grabs now. Someone is going to win a random drawing. So for number 1, someone play a drum roll. 1 and 31. Answer number 8. Caradwin. Caradwin wins again. See, if you put "when" in your name, then you win multiple times. Caradwin, congratulations. $60 for you. And then one more. Ran between 1 and 31. Answer 27. Call him, Rosh! He did it! He gets paid back! Congratulations to both of you, Colin Rosh and Caradwin. The hard C's take it today. Congratulations to you guys. Thank you so much to everyone for your contributions. You have made Mrs. Kingpilled very, very happy. I will be in touch with you guys to find out what you want, what retailers you want for your gift cards. Appreciate you all. Please do share the show. Go to the Kingpilled Discord and join up. Kingpilled.com. And I will see you guys on the next Labe. For now, I leave you with Hulk.
When they took a shot at my hero, and they tried to kill the next president of the United States, enough was enough. And I said,